beings as a species are capable to get a climate change strategy that works?
If we don't let the best be the enemy of the good, and that, you know, that's a risk. We are making progress at the moment. If I think where we are now compared with where we are 20, 25 years ago, we have come much further. All the countries of the world have now accepted that human beings are unequivocally the cause of the climate change that we're seeing. We've got recently an undertaking to transition away from fossil fuels. We have an expansion of renewable energy and clean energy sources that we couldn't have anticipated 10 years ago. So I am optimistic that we're going in the right direction. What the challenge is, can we up our efforts to reach the kind of goals that we set ourselves under the Paris Agreement?
Jim Ski, I thank you very much for joining me on Hard Talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That was Hard Talk. I'm Saroja Coelho. You're listening to CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba, and welcome to Friday. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We are live in downtown Winnipeg on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube this morning. And the rain is steadily coming down, and it's going to continue. Heavy rain expected, 30 to 40 millimeters. And as we started sharing with you yesterday, this is a serious system, so it has prompted a rainfall warning, and we are going to get 50 to 60 millimeters of rain in this system through Saturday afternoon all across a wide swath of southern Manitoba. Also, just while we're on weather this morning, there's a fog advisory that's been issued for up in Churchill. Thanks for joining us wherever you're listening in Manitoba, and let's say good morning to the team. Hello, Corey Funk. Corey directs the program and will be on air covering the commute. Good morning, Abby Adiyemi, who's behind the controls and covers weather on air, and also in the control room this morning. Good morning, Brad Lillies. Heather Wells is here also 3 minutes to 6. She's here with our news headlines to start the day. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, an affordable housing co-op in Brandon hopes new provincial funding will help keep it afloat. Spruce Woods Provincial Housing Co-op has inked a 5-year deal with Manitoba Housing to help cover the cost of operations. We'll hear how much more work will need to be done so they can help to keep rent affordable in that affordable housing co-op. And a music video to raise awareness of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. That video was created by some grade 5 students at Strathcona School. We're going to hear more about their project, which was part of a showcase at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights yesterday. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
We, on the program this morning, are going to be talking about the rain and talking to some people that are very, very concerned about it. After heavy rain last week caused their basements to flood, they're wondering what this system's going to do. Some of these homeowners are in St. James, and they're watching what's happening. So we're going to talk to one of those residents also about what happened in her home last week because of the rain and the city's response. So stay tuned for that. Also, to another topic, we are going to talk to one of the organizers today of the Queer Arts Festival. It kicks off in Winnipeg this weekend. We'll find out if it's something you want to check out and head out and do. And then later, a story of survival on the program. It is Boating Safety Awareness Week. That was the calling conversation on noon yesterday. And after surviving a near drowning in the Red River, an experienced boater wants to share the importance of wearing a life jacket. Stay tuned.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
As a child, my world was forever changed.
George Miller is the mastermind behind the epic series of Mad Max films. George will tell you how his filmmaking has evolved over the past 4 decades, and he'll give you the best summary of what these movies are actually about you've ever heard. That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcast.
Morning, I'm Peter Cowan in St. John's. A bipartisan group of U.S. senators is calling on Canada to boost defense spending. It sent a sharply worded letter to Ottawa yesterday urging the federal government to meet its NATO commitments. Let's bring in Janice McGregor from our Parliamentary Bureau. Janice, what did the senators say?
Well, it opens by laying out how NATO is facing what they call one of the most severe threat landscapes in its history. And from there, the 23 senators from both sides of the aisle in Washington lay out how, notwithstanding the important contributions Canada's made, leading the battle group in Latvia, for example, in their eyes, it still falls short. Their focus is squarely on Canada's failure to meet its spending obligations, only budgeted to hit 1.7% of Canada's gross domestic product in 2029. That's 5 years after NATO allies were supposed to hit a 2% target. Bill Blair, Canada's defence minister, was in Washington just last week. He laid out Canada's future plans in meetings with his counterpart, Lloyd Austin, and other senior officials on Parliament Hill yesterday. He continued to give assurances that Canada is stepping up.
We know that Canada needs to invest in other capabilities that are not yet included in this year's budget, but are inevitably part of the investment that we're going to have to make. But it's important those investments be made well.
Why might the senators be sending this letter now?
Well, it suggests some might not like what they heard from Blair last week. The next NATO summit will be hosted by the Americans in Washington in July. It often falls to the host to set the tone, and in this case, it might include more nagging for people not keeping up. It's also an election year, and threats to hold Canada accountable for not spending more do ebb and flow in official Washington, depending on who's talking and what domestic interests are pressuring them. The current administration's usually nowhere near this harsh. Last month, for example, President Joe Biden's ambassador in Ottawa, David Cohen, said he looks at a wide range of factors when he measures Canada's contribution, not only this percentage, but its overall trajectory, which is going up.
Janice McGregor in Ottawa, thank you.
You're welcome.
The truck driver who caused the Humboldt Broncos bus crash 6 years ago will face a deportation hearing in Calgary today. Jaskarat Singh Sidhu was sentenced to 8 years in prison after pleading guilty to causing the bus crash in Saskatchewan that killed 16 people and injured 13 others. His lawyer says there's no doubt the deportation order will be granted. He says the next step will be to seek permanent resident status for Sidhu on humanitarian grounds. Israel Defense Forces says it has recovered the bodies of more hostages in Gaza.
It is with a heavy heart that I share that last night Israeli Special Forces in Gaza rescued the bodies of our hostages Hanania Vlonka, Michel Nissenbaum, Orion Hernandez.
IDF spokesman Daniel Hagari saying all three were killed during the October 7th Hamas attack and had their bodies taken to Gaza. The announcement comes less than a week after the army said it found the bodies of 3 other Israeli hostages killed on October 7th. Hamas-led militants killed around 1,200 people, mainly civilians, and abducted around 250 others on that day. We're watching the World Court this morning and an upcoming decision from the International Court of Justice. In a few hours, it'll rule whether Israel should stop its offensive in Rafah. The case was brought forward by South Africa, which is pursuing a separate legal action at the court accusing Israel of genocide. Julia Chapman reports.
South Africa says events in Gaza have shocked the conscience of humanity. It's calling for Israeli troops to withdraw from Rafah, where they began an offensive earlier this month. It has also requested the court order a ceasefire and allow unhindered access for aid workers and journalists. Israeli government spokesman Avi Hyman is defiant.
No power on earth will stop Israel from protecting its citizens and going after Hamas in Gaza. We will destroy Hamas. We will return peace and security to the people of Israel and to the people of Gaza.
Israel has called the case unfounded and South Africa's arguments false and biased. Rulings from the ICJ are legally binding but difficult to enforce. But a decision critical of Israel could increase its isolation. And it's not the only court scrutinizing Israel's actions in Gaza. Earlier this week, the International Criminal Court requested arrest warrants for Israel's Prime Minister and Defense Minister, along with 3 Hamas leaders. In a separate case in January, the ICJ ordered Israel to prevent a genocide in Gaza, but it stopped short of declaring that one was already being committed. Julia Chapman for CBC News, London.
In Papua New Guinea, a desperate search is underway following a landslide that killed as many as 100 people. A mountain collapsed onto homes in 6 remote villages as people were sleeping. Government officials have sent in a response team to start providing relief and recover bodies. The collapse has cut off a major road used by residents to get supplies. Villagers say the number of those killed could be much higher. On the Spanish island of Majorca, at least 4 people have died when a 2-story restaurant collapsed. 16 others have been injured. Emergency crews are wrapping up a search and rescue operation. They've cordoned off the scene. Majorca is a popular tourist destination, and local media says there were people dancing on the restaurant's terrace when it collapsed. Officials say excess weight probably triggered the incident, but the exact cause is still being investigated. At least one Canadian was among the thousands of tourists trapped by deadly violence in New Caledonia. The Pacific Island is a French territory. Rioting erupted a week after France changed voting rules in favor of its nationals on the island. After days of uncertainty, 19-year-old Matthias Prael from BC has been able to leave the country. Georgie Smythe explains.
Everything was kind of just shut down.
Matthias Prael never expected his trip to New Caledonia to end in an emergency airlift by the Australian Air Force.
Along with maybe 50, 75 other tourists. It was quite the experience to go to the airport and see all the military members and the army members with their full-on automatic rifles, and then boarding one of the cargo planes.
He's now safe in Fiji. 130 Canadians are registered in the French territory, according to Global Affairs Canada. Hundreds of tourists were evacuated after violence broke out when the French government tried to impose new rules that would give tens of thousands of non-Indigenous residents rights to vote. The Kanaks are Indigenous to New Caledonia and make up almost half of the population of the Pacific Island. Vera Zulu is a Kanak activist and says France is failing to govern the island.
Stop it, Macron, stop it with the law. Don't remove our right, indigenous right.
French President Emmanuel Macron visited this week. He says political dialogue should resume on the issue as soon as possible. New Caledonia has been ruled from Paris since the 1800s. Many Indigenous people fear the reforms could further erode their hopes for fuller autonomy or maybe independence. Georgie Smythe, CBC News, Vancouver.
Universities in Hong Kong are seeing a steep drop in people from the city becoming faculty. For the first time in decades, there are more academics from abroad and mainland China. China's tough security law for Hong Kong is being blamed for the decline. Journalist Laura Westbrook explains.
On campus at Hong Kong's oldest university, HKU, exams have finished. This is one of 8 public universities where mainland Chinese lecturers now outnumber those from the city. Students here have noticed the change.
Well, I wish there could be more diversity, like from different countries, not only from mainland China.
I think in the end of the day, the quality of the teaching is what matters most for me.
Beijing imposed a national security law in 2020 that criminalizes succession, subversion, terrorism, and collusion with foreign or external forces. Britain and Canada responded by announcing new migration schemes for Hong Kongers. Hundreds of thousands of residents have since emigrated. Steve Jung from the University of London has noticed an increase in Hong Kong academics who have relocated to the UK.
Those who are working on Hong Kong's politics, society, the freedom for them to do their research without fear of the state security law of Hong Kong being used to punish them has made a lot of them very, very uncomfortable staying on in Hong Kong.
A reality not lost on students who have watched the educational landscape shift from one of open critical thought to one increasingly under Beijing's control. Laura Westbrook for CBC News, Hong Kong.
And that's the latest national and international news from World Report. For news anytime, go to cbcnews.ca. I'm Peter Cowan.
Well, here comes the rain, everyone. We knew it was coming. It has begun, and it is steadily falling in downtown Winnipeg. That's where we are right now. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. You're on CBC with the morning show, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube. 10 after 6 is the time, and 6 degrees with rain is the temperature. This hour on the program, we're going to be talking about something that apparently is not talked about enough. We're going to talk to the co-chair, Paul Adams, about work that's being done right now by the Canadian Grief Alliance. They're working toward improving supports for people who are grieving. So stay tuned and we'll hear about a recent survey they did in Canada. Also, what goes into the making of a summer hit song? From Sabrina Carpenter's mega hit Espresso to Taylor Swift's Cruel Summer, popular songs that peak in the summer months seem to worm their way into your brain, and they stick there, right? But how do you make a song of the summer? Stay tuned. We're going to have some musical fun this Friday morning. Right now, though, Heather Wells is in with news headlines.
Good morning. Well, Lawrence Pinsky has been chosen to represent the Progressive Conservatives in next month's Tuxedo by-election. The family lawyer says he was motivated to run in part because of the conflict in Israel. He says he tried to convince others he knew to run for Heather Stephenson's old seat, but they were reluctant, he says, because of a rising tide of anti-Semitism and intolerance, and that drove him to run himself. So we'll hear more from him. We reached him while he is in Israel. We'll hear a little bit of that. Also, an affordable housing co-op in Brandon hopes new provincial funding will help keep it afloat. Spruce Woods Housing Co-op has just inked a 5-year deal with Manitoba Housing to help cover costs of operations there. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 6:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, right now, I think we may not be saying this in 24 hours when it continues, but right now it's like a nice, steady rain out there, Abby. But can you tell us more about the system?
Yeah, I'll tell you. The system was seeing rainfall warning for our region, Winnipeg, the Red River Valley, Pembina Valley, Interlake, the White Shell, parts of the province right along the U.S. border. We're going to be seeing heavy rain. That's what's expected through Saturday afternoon, and we're expecting about 50 to 60 millimeters. Now, the heavy rain is being caused by this strong low-pressure system moving towards northwards from the Dakotas, and the heaviest rain is expected this morning, sometime this morning, and expected to taper off overnight and ending by midday tomorrow. Now, along with the heavy wind, we can expect northerly winds gusting up to 60 kilometers per hour all the way from today till Saturday, and I would advise drivers, please be cautious on the road. If visibility is reduced, turn your headlights on and maintain a safe distance. Now, that's our situation for the south. If we go up north, we have a fog advisory for the Churchill area, where we hear the dense fog is causing near zero visibility in the Churchill region, and the fog is expected to last through this morning. However, conditions should improve by late morning, so that's more like a good news. But right now in Winnipeg, it is 6 degrees. We're seeing some light rain at the moment. We're in for a wet one today. We should expect rain with amounts of about 30 to 40 millimeters, and it will be breezy with winds coming from the northeast, also becoming stronger into the afternoon period, and we'll hold temperatures steady at 8. I know we are at 6 right now, but we're going to climb to 8, and we're going to be stuck there for the rest of the day.
8's actually the warm spot in the province as well right now. So Emerson is at 8 right now. The cold spot, actually, Abby was talking about the fog, is up in Churchill. It's -5. So at this hour, they're experiencing freezing fog up there. Mixed bag of weather this May. Let's get into what's going on the commute, Corey.
Yeah, so far been pretty quiet, but I know with this kind of deluge we're expecting this morning, wouldn't be surprised if we hear maybe about some potentially watery underpasses, things like that. So if you're out there, this is why I'm here. Give me a call. Tell me what you're seeing, if there's something impacting your commute. If you're walking, bike, and driving, I wore my slush pants in today on my bike ride. Give me a call, 204-788-3093.
I am 12 years old. I am from the buffalo, from the eagle and the turtle. I'm from Grandma's house, a safe place from making and happiness.
We're listening to just part of a song called The Last Red Dress, written and performed by grade 5 students at Strathcona School. Powerful, hey? It is the culmination of months of learning about missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, Two-Spirit people as well, and it was made for an event at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights that was on yesterday. It brought together Manitoba students to present various projects they had worked on about important human rights issues. CBC's Zabina Ahmed spoke with Peter Grozdanovich, the grade 5 teacher who helped the students with this musical project.
We actually started planning for the project last May, and it's been a full year project.
And we were finding that there was a lot of information on the news about missing and murdered Indigenous women. My students started talking a little bit about it, and I thought that that would be a project that we could work on. This is the third year of looking at some of the Indigenous issues that are facing the population. And so I spent the summer planning it, and we began to deliver it in September. Our students were involved in something called project-based learning. And project-based learning is about becoming informed, collaborating, connecting to the community. And we thought that the best way to talk about this issue in an age-appropriate way was to do it through story. And we really looked at what the Canadian Museum for Human Rights was doing, and we thought a song would be a powerful message, especially a song that is written and created by students. And so then we paired up with musicians and video editors and graphic designers, and we collaborated together to create this amazing piece of music.
If you could tell us about the students' involvement in this project.
We had planned the project beginning last May, and then we looked at different facets of the project, and students suggested areas that they were interested in delving in. And after that was done, we created small teams, and they researched and worked on those particular areas. In terms of preparing for this particular event, the Upstandard event here at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, that was a 4-month process where the students were learning about public speaking. And we actually had teams of students who learned how to conduct interviews. They learned what it was like to operate a camera and lighting and being a director and being a reporter. And then they interviewed each other, they interviewed staff members, and then they went out into the community and spoke to people out in the community. And then from that, we selected the 6 who we felt and the students felt were best represent our project. And they're here today, and they're really excited to present. This event here, the Upstandard event, is something that we have been preparing for 1 year.
And what about the research of this? How did you, these are all real stories, right?
Each
of these.
This is an extremely sensitive topic, and making it age appropriate was really important for us. We started by looking at picture books. Missing Namama is a picture book delving into this particular topic, and that was our springboard. And then from that, students could then research online, and they could go as far as they wanted. And then when we set up the poetry was a big thing. So we had a group of students that were going to create the poetry. And the poetry was the foundation for the original piece of music. And that kind of moved us in all the directions that we needed to go in. It is an extremely powerful piece, written and performed by students, and including the book that they created. We had a group of students who created the poetry, and another group who looked at the poetry and created the images and the drawings that represent those words. And so it is the most powerful project I've ever done, and I'm extremely proud of my students.
Very, very cool, right? Really powerful. That is teacher Peter Grozdanovich, the grade 5 teacher who helps students with the project. He's talking about the students from Strathcona School. So here they are talking a bit about it, the students that is, and then we'll hear more of the music.
When we started this piece of poetry that was to become a song, we thought it would be hard.
But it wasn't, because the more we worked together and the more we talked, the more our ideas came together. We took ideas from our own lives and experiences and combined them to create one person, the red dress girl. She is a part of each of us, and we are each a part of her. I am 12 years old. I am from the buffalo, from the eagle and the turtle. I'm from Grandma's house, a safe place from making and happiness. I am from the snow on my rooftop, from the grass that shimmers in the sunlight, and being joyful. I am from my gossiping, having a sister by heart, if not by blood. I'm from the bracelet Mom gave me for my birthday, from the shell we found on the beach, smooth and fragile, a reminder, sunny days together. I am far away now, years have passed, but I'm still 12 years old. Listen to us, help us, save us, find us, fix this, don't let this happen, respect us, protect us, save us, find us, fix this, don't let this happen again.
I've got some goosebumps now, especially hearing those young voices and knowing they put this together. The Last Red Dress. Those voices belong to Ileana, Bibiana, and Faith from Strathcona School, grade 5 students, Reese from Clear Spring Middle School, and Emily A. Cole, St. Anne Immersion. It was written by Kirsten, Pauline, Rochelle, and Teresa, students from Strathcona School. Just going through some of the credits quickly here, but want to acknowledge the students by name at least. It's featured, though, at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights Upstander exhibit. And CBC's Zubina Ahmed was there yesterday. You can read more online. 6:23 a.m. is the time. Corey's popped in with a quick traffic note.
Yeah, Maria called. There's a jackknife semi blocking the entire cloverleaf that takes you from westbound number 1 onto the northbound east perimeter. She says it looks like it just happened. There's no one else on scene right now, but you can't get from westbound number 1 onto the northbound east perimeter because of that jackknife semi. If you see something else, 204-788-3093.
All right, thank you, Corey. Time right now is 6:24 a.m. and up next on the program, we're going to continue talking about music, but a very different kind of music. This mega hit song has been dominating the charts right now.
Now he's thinking about me every night. Oh, is it that sweet I kiss so? So you can't sleep, baby, I know. Does that mean it's my soul? Move it up, down, left, right, oh. Switch it up like Nintendo. So you can't sleep, baby, I know. Does that mean it's my soul?
Anybody else feel like taking the top down on their car, driving out to the beach, going on a road trip? Well, that's kind of the point of our next interview. We're listening to Espresso by Sabrina Carpenter. It is poised to be the hit song of the summer. It could have competition from the likes of Taylor Swift and Billie Eilish. Olivia Pasquarelli is with us to talk all about what makes a summer bop. Good morning.
Morning, hello.
I know obviously you're a CBC producer, but also an alternative pop musician. You go under Baby O. So tell me what you think goes into crafting a good summer bop.
Yes, I absolutely love espresso, and I do want to get in the car and roll the top down and go to the beach. I would say you need to have a song that is unapologetically self-indulgent. It makes you feel like the main character during this iconic season when the sun is shining. And, you know, of course, it should have a big singable chorus, lots of buzz, like online and otherwise. You know, and it's ubiquitous. It's playing in people's cars. It's playing at barbecues. You're hanging out in the park. It's coming out of everyone's little Bluetooth speakers. You know, these are the things that I think make for a summer pop hit.
Are there threads that run through them when you think of the ones as sort of a crown songs of the summer from the past? Like, is the pace usually the same, a little bit easygoing, but still danceable? Or how do you describe it?
Yeah, for sure. So I do think there are some like hallmarks to it. Definitely a good tempo that you could move your body to, an up tempo. But I think the main thing is that it's really loaded with a lot of repetition and hooks. And I think that's also what espresso does. You know, they say that it's really important to repeat melodies at least 3 times so that it sticks with folks. And I think that's what really creates an earworm. So, you know, you want a lot of repetition. So if someone hears a song once or twice, you know, they're already singing it. And that's done through lots of repetition. And even with espresso, you know, like espresso starts off with the chorus right off the top. We're hooking people in right away. And I think that's really important if you want people to remember the song and for it to really turn into an earworm.
Why do so many artists strive to have a hit summer song? I'm wondering, and maybe an added question to that is, I'm wondering how many of them end up being part of marketing plans and schemes, because they end up in commercials a lot.
Yeah. Well, okay. I think from the business perspective, summertime is festival season. It's a time that a lot of musicians start going on tour and playing shows. So it would be, it's smart to put out new music at this time that's really catchy. You get back on people's radars. Maybe it makes folks excited to want to come out to a show. And this is how musicians make money, right? Like through performing, through touring. So it does make sense to release music and particularly aim for like a summer hit right now so that folks will come out to your show. And I think that's probably why there's like a lot of energy towards that.
What are your summer hit contenders? Do you have any faves right now that are going to give Espresso a run for its money, you think?
Yes. So I do really love Espresso, but also, summer, we've got a long time here. So I think songs will come and go out of the spotlight. But I think heading into Pride, I would have to say Billie Eilish just put out a new record. And the song Lunch, I think, is like a super upbeat, dancey, sort of sapphic pop hit. So I'm going to go with Lunch by Billie Eilish and also Good Luck Babe by Chappell Roan, which that song, similar to Espresso, is really having a big moment on Instagram and TikTok. So those are my contenders right now, but I know summer's long and things, come into the spotlight and then move out as with the online, with social media, things come and go quick,
For sure. I'm going to have to swap out What Was I Made For and stop crying over that song and put Lunch in instead.
Yes, I love that.
Olivia, thanks very much for being with us this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Talking about the summer songs and what goes into making one, Olivia Pasquarelli is with us, CBC producer and alternative pop musician, Baby O. It's Friday. I know it doesn't feel much like summer out there. It's raining and it's gray, but we can improve our mood. Here's more of Espresso by Sabrina Carpenter. Well, we're going to give you a little fade on Espresso, and that's because people are calling the traffic line right now to build on what Corey mentioned. So on the commuter line, jackknife semi blocking the entire Cloverleaf. It takes you from the westbound number 1 to the northbound east perimeter. So Maria called about it, so did David. Apparently not too many backups there yet, but please reach out to us, 788-3093, if you have any updates on that. The rain continues to fall. We have business news still ahead. We're going to talk about developing news about the grocery sector in Canada after your CBC Winnipeg news.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, yes, we still have that rainfall warning. Rain at times heavy through the day in Winnipeg, 30 to 40 millimeters. Some parts of southern Manitoba will see even more. It's going to be windy this morning. Our temperature sticking close to 8. Right now, we are at 6. Lawrence Pinsky has been chosen to represent the Progressive Conservatives in next month's Tuxedo by-election. The family lawyer says he was motivated to run in part because of the conflict in Israel. He says he tried convincing others he knew to run for Heather Stephenson's old seat, but they were reluctant, he says, because of a rising tide of anti-Semitism and intolerance. It drove him to enter the race himself.
It should be a driver for every good, right-thinking Manitoban. It's unacceptable. People used to come to Canada and to Manitoba to escape conflict, not to bring their wars over here.
Now, that audio is because it was a FaceTime interview. Pinsky was fast asleep half a world away when he heard the results of last night's nomination meeting. He was in Israel for the death of a family friend when the by-election was called on Monday. The by-election is set for June 18th. An affordable housing co-op in Brandon hopes new provincial funding will help keep it afloat. Spruce Woods Housing Co-op has inked a 5-year deal with Manitoba Housing to help cover the costs of operations. Manager Ava Cameron says the funding will help the co-op stay affordable for its 160 residents. But the 39-year-old building still needs millions in repairs to keep a quarter of its 81 units open.
Hope is that we're going to be able to get some capital funding to fix our buildings before we have to say, that we're going to have to shut 28 townhouses down and displace people, because the longer we wait, the longer we, leave it, the worse they're getting.
Cameron and Manitoba Housing would not disclose how much funding the co-op will be getting for operations, but Cameron says the co-op needs at least $2.5 million for repairs. A deportation hearing is scheduled today for the truck driver responsible for the Humboldt Broncos bus crash. Jaskarat Singh Sidhu was sentenced to 8 years in prison for his role in the 2018 crash. He was granted full parole last year. However, a criminal conviction that carries a sentence of more than 6 months makes a permanent resident ineligible to remain in Canada. 16 people were killed, 13 were injured when a transport truck driven by Sidhu struck the Humboldt Broncos team bus near Armley, Saskatchewan. Still in Saskatchewan.
My oldest son and I were out driving around just checking fields, see where we could start seeding, and we came across the largest object. Originally, we just thought it was garbage.
Barry Sawchuk, a farmer in rural Saskatchewan, after finding a 2-meter wide, 40-kilogram piece of space junk. It came from a SpaceX launch. It's not the only thing. Just last month, a piece from the International Space Station went through the roof of a home in Florida. Experts are concerned we're seeing more space junk land on the Earth. You can hear more on that story and other national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. More than 70 students from various schools took part in a project showcase at the Human Rights Museum yesterday, the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. The event saw everything from art to books and music videos. Anna Gosh is a grade 11 student at Mennonite Brethren Collegiate Institute. She did her project on missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls.
I may not be Indigenous myself, but I find this issue to be really important, and I find that the rest of Canada needs to acknowledge that this is a huge crisis and that it needs to be heard about and it needs to be talked about.
To be an upstander event is an annual showcase at the museum. It encourages young people to learn about important issues in the classroom and take action to make a difference. Well, making a difference, the Oilers take Game 1.
Scores! It's over! 32 seconds in, redirected from the slot.
The Oilers beating the Stars 3-2 last night. Connor McDavid there scoring in double overtime in Dallas. That is the first game in the Western Conference Final of the Stanley Cup playoffs. You can hear more national, international news. Get the latest. Just go to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
I could get on board with the Oilers.
Yeah, me too. I love it.
100%. All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, let's get into our rainy forecast. Here's Abby Adiyemi.
Yeah, I'll just tell you a rainfall warning in effect for southern Manitoba. For Winnipeg here, we're expecting a wet and breezy day with heavy rain totaling about 30 to 40 millimeters, and temperatures will hold steady around 8 degrees. Tonight, the rain will continue and another 10 millimeters expected, becoming windy and then dropping to a low of 4 degrees. And tomorrow we'll have periods of rain ending in the afternoon, leaving cloudy skies. But currently we are at 6 degrees in the city. As we head to Brandon, where it's currently 6 degrees with light rain, the rain will become heavy and then it's going to be mixing with snow this afternoon. We should be seeing about 40 to 50 millimeters expected for folks in Brandon, and temperatures will hold steady near 8 degrees. Moving north to Thompson, currently 2 degrees and mostly cloudy. We're expecting these cloudy skies to stick around all through the day and would see a high of 10. And if we move farther to the northern part of the province in Churchill, where it's currently -5 with freezing fog, which is causing near zero visibility, and this should be dissipating by late morning, and then would see a mix of sun and clouds with a high of around 7 degrees. Down in Dauphin, it's currently 6 degrees with light rain. The rain will begin sometime later this morning, and then you should be seeing about 10 to 20 millimeters expected, and temperature will hold steady near 7 degrees. If we move to Gimli, It's currently 5 degrees. We're seeing some light rain at the moment. The rainfall warning is also in effect for the Gimli area and the Interlake region. We'll be seeing heavy rain totaling about 40 to 50 millimeters, and temperatures will get to 7 degrees. In Steinbach, it's currently 6 degrees. We're seeing light rain also. It's also under rainfall warning, 20 to 30 millimeters of rain expected for that part of the province, and temperatures will hold steady near 8 degrees. And finally, in Morris, it's currently 8 degrees with light rain under the rainfall warning also, and the Pembina Valley region will see 30 to 40 millimeters of rain, and temperatures already holding steady at that high of 8 that we're talking about.
So let me ask you guys a question. Okay, team poll. Do you use an umbrella?
Ooh. I am bad with umbrellas. I have a history. Like, I take it out, but it never comes back home with me.
Oh, you leave them places and forget you took it there.
Yeah.
So now you don't bother.
I don't bother.
You, Corey?
I just pop up the hood and I just go. Umbrellas, especially after living in the East Coast, they just turned inside out right away because it's always so windy. I was just like, no.
I wonder who uses an umbrella. Like, honestly, it's like I see so many, like, hood up. I also am sort of like, yeah, I'll just throw my hood up,
Not
whatever.
to make fun of BCers, but I've seen them use it. It was snowing one day when I was there in December, and people were pulling out their umbrellas because it was snowing. Not to say every BCer does it.
But it's just our prairie perspective. We know different province, different things. But yeah,
Yes.
sorry.
It doesn't come home
I'm
with
sure.
me.
I think the umbrella. There's probably a lot of umbrellas in BC. I bet you there's a lot of umbrella users.
My husband has this thing every time where I hope he's on the treadmill or something, or on the morning bike and not listening. But honestly, Jean-Paul will say to me, he'll be like, we don't need an umbrella. Put your hood up. We're just going to the car. Like, he's got this thing about bringing the umbrella, and he never wants to take the umbrella. And I'm always like, oh, where's the umbrella? So we also kind of always leave the house without it. But
I see mine as a donation. Whenever I take it out, I know I'm just donating it to wherever I forget it.
Well, you can open the blinds, Abby. You can look. Maybe you'll see some of your umbrellas going by.
It's possible.
All right, let's get into what's happening in the morning commute with Corey.
Yeah, really, so far, the only issue out there, I heard from both Maria and David, there's a jackknife semi blocking that cloverleaf that takes you from the westbound number 1 onto the northbound east perimeter. So look out for that. David did say you can kind of sneak around a little bit by taking the shoulder, but just be really, really careful if you are. But otherwise, it might be causing some backups because people do really have to slow down to pull that off. So look out for that. If you see anything else though going on, if you have an update on that or something else, give me a call. That number 204-788-3093.
All right. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
And as Corey mentioned, we'll keep you updated on that. Well, let's get to business news now via Zoom. Crystal Ramlakan joins us with our report. Good morning to you.
Hey, good morning, Marcy. I want to say that I also think my umbrellas are donations.
Really?
Every time I go on vacation, I buy like a beautiful new umbrella from like some nice store, and then we always like leave it in the cab or like leave it at the hotel. Yeah, there's been lots of, and now we're like, no, we can't buy another umbrella. We wasted so much money on them.
You know what? Yesterday we were talking about cars and how old they are and how many clicks. Maybe we should ask who's had the oldest umbrella, because apparently we're all leaving them around town. So
yes, and for some reason you always keep the one that's the worst one, the ones that's like broken and goes in and out.
I know. I still have this one.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
I still
useless.
Like a really bad one I bought in Italy, and it just from just some like street vendor, and it was like $2, and it always blows inside out. And that's the one I still have.
Yep. Classic. Let's start talking about groceries this morning, specifically developing news about the grocery sector in this country.
Yeah, that's right. So the Competition Bureau has launched investigations into the parent companies of grocery chains Loblaws and Sobeys for alleged anti-competitive conduct. So the Commissioner of Competition says there's reason to believe the firm's use of so-called property controls limits retail grocery competition. And the commissioner claims the controls grocery giants bake into these lease agreements are designed to restrict other potential tenants, and this is hampering competition. So the Competition Bureau revealed its investigation into the use of property controls in the grocery sector in February, and the commissioner's probe is focused on the company's operations in Halifax, but also more broadly across the country. Now, Sobeys' owner has called the inquiry unlawful. And of course, this all comes as major grocers have been under a lot of public and political pressure as food prices have risen by double digits over just a handful of years.
Let's go to another story. This one about a shakeup at a Canadian-based clothing company, Gildan Activewear.
Yes, so the CEO and board of directors have resigned ahead of the company's annual meeting on Tuesday. So this paves the way for the company's co-founder to return as chief executive. Gildan is a major apparel supplier for companies like Amazon and Target, and it also owns American Apparel. Now, several major shareholders have been trying to reinstate former CEO Glenn Chamandy after he was pushed out last year. And at the time, the company said Chamandy had no credible long-term strategy for the company and had lost the board's trust and confidence. But since then, activist shareholder Browning West and other shareholders have proposed a new slate of board of directors for this election next week. And the departure of the board is an apparent concession that a majority of shareholders favored Browning West's slate instead. Now, the outgoing board also says it has ended previously announced discussions about a potential sale of the company. And the outgoing directors believe it's in the best interest for them to resign, and because the company says shareholders have made their views clear here.
And finally, let's talk about Red Lobster and the farewell to the cheese and garlic biscuits. What's the latest in their bankruptcy issues?
Yes, so the seafood chain plans to ask a Canadian court to enforce the U.S. bankruptcy here in Canada. So that's the latest. And if the court approves this application, it will prevent creditors from taking action in Canada. Now, the bankruptcy will give the chain time to assess which of its locations are profitable and figure out whether to continue to operate. Now, at its peak, the chain operated 700 restaurants across Canada and the U.S., but it had major losses last year, partly due to an all-you-can-eat shrimp promotion, which we talked about. But you know what, Marcy? When it comes to business, there's so many layers in every story. That is not the only part of the story. Red Lobster is also investigating seafood supplier Thai Union, which held a stake in the company, and the role it played in the promotion, which caused an $11 million loss. So after the promotion launched, restaurants, of course, faced shrimp shortages, not surprising there. And around the same time, the company eliminated 2 shrimp suppliers, leaving Thai Union with an exclusive deal that possibly led to higher costs. So Thai Union says it has exited its investment in the company and it's not going to comment further. Also, another layer here. In the wake of the 2008 financial crash, Red Lobster began to struggle. And then in 2014, its parent company got rid of it, so it could focus on more profitable brands such as Olive Garden. Now, the buyer was a San Francisco-based private equity firm called Golden Gate Capital. And instead of ponying up the $2.1 billion price itself, it partly funded this deal by selling off most of Red Lobster's real estate to another company. And then Red Lobster rented its own restaurants back. So that produced a lot of cost pressures that Red Lobster didn't have before. Now, an analyst that CBC spoke to says there's a possibility Red Lobster can continue in Canada, even if there's a U.S. shutdown. There's a good core customer base here, and it has carved out a niche. But it also operates in this premium casual dining space, which has seen a lot of growth over the last decade. So competition has become more aggressive.
A complicated story, hey? As you said, always lots of layers. What's up in the markets?
So in Europe, markets are lower, mirroring a global trend as the U.S. interest rate outlook weighs on sentiment. Germany, the U.K., and France are all down. In Asia, stocks are down after Wall Street tumbled amid rate worries. So Japan, Shanghai, and Hong Kong are all down. Oil is down 14 cents to 76.73 U.S. per barrel. Gold is up $5.10 to $2,342.60 U.S. per ounce. And the dollar is up 0.06 of a cent to 72.9 cents U.S.
Have an awesome weekend. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcy. You too.
That's Crystalie Round-McCann with our business news. 6 degrees. The rain is falling steadily in Winnipeg. It's also falling in Brandon, where it's 5 degrees. Thompson, mostly cloudy, and 3. Of course, we have this system. It's going to bring heavy rain through huge swaths of southern Manitoba and even the border towns as well. And we are expecting in the system before it tapers off through Saturday afternoon, tomorrow, 50 to 60 millimeters. Winnipeg for today, 30 to 40 millimeters. Our temperature will rise a little bit, and then we'll be steady around 8 degrees for most of the day. Well, music from 2/3 of a group called Celtic music group called Coig. Rachel Davis and Darren McMullen, they've gathered together. They're from Nova Scotia, and they are on a new project now. This is their take on Gowan's Dancing on My Own Ground.
I must confess, I'm more or less have played your last request. I took a trip aboard your ship, but now we're back, I guess. When I let you tempt me, did I think my tank was empty or just run low? I don't know. One too many pieces missing. Had to learn how not to listen. Now I know, finally coming round, dancing on my own ground again. All that I lost I found, dancing on my own ground again. And I'm alright on my return. The bridge was burned, some self-respect I've earned. No more betrayed, no judge was paid. Another page has turned. Many stars have fallen, 'cause they thought they heard the calling for a better place. They tumbling ever after to the echoed hollow laughter, but they're lost in space, finally coming round, dancing on my own ground again. All that I lost I found, dancing on my own ground again. And I'm alright. When I let you tempt me, did I think my tank was empty or just run low? I don't know. One too many pieces missing. Had to learn how not to listen. Now I know, I finally come around, dancing on my own ground again. All that I lost I found, dancing on my own ground again. I finally come around, dancing on my own ground again. Love me or shoot me down, dancing on my own ground again. And I'm alright.
Cover of Gowan's Dancing on My Own Ground. This is from Nova Scotia, a couple of artists, Darren McMullen and Rachel Davis out of Nova Scotia with their cover of Gowan's tune from the 80s.
On the topics that matter, your voice should be heard.
I'm really concerned.
And I'm not really happy about that.
Radio Noon is where you can voice your take. I'm Janet Stewart. From 12:30 to 1 p.m., Radio Noon opens the phone lines on one important topic.
It just brings everyone together.
Radio Noon's call-in segment, 204-780-0893. We want to hear from you, weekdays on CBC.
So you got an issue in traffic this Friday morning at 10 to 7 here. So Maria and David called a jackknife semi blocking the cloverleaf that takes you from westbound number 1 to the northbound east perimeter. So David says you can sneak around on the shoulder, but we really careful. It could cause some backups, though, through the morning as traffic continues to pick up here. So call us if you have any update on that or anything else in the commute. 788-3093 is where you can reach us in traffic. Well, next on the show, the Canadian Grief Alliance is working toward an action plan. They want to improve supports for people who are grieving. In that connection, earlier this week, the Alliance released the results of a national survey they conducted. They asked nearly 4,000 people about their experiences with grief. To talk about the survey and tell us about the goals, Paul Adams is with us, co-chair of the Canadian Grief Alliance. Good morning.
Good morning.
So tell us about the survey, as I just suggested. What did you ask Canadians, and what did you learn from what they told you?
Well, I would say the two big takeaways were, number one, that roughly half the people who said they were grieving or experiencing profound loss felt that they weren't adequately supported. That's a big gap. The second thing is that there's a gap between what people who are grieving want and say they need and what the rest of us are able or inclined to do. And that is 83% of the people we talked to said they wanted to be asked about their loss. They wanted to be asked about the person who is gone in the case of grief arises from somebody dying. And, and I'm guilty of this myself and have been, which is that when somebody has a loss or, a death of somebody close to them, or perhaps the loss of a pregnancy, or perhaps a parent or a spouse has Alzheimer's, we steer around those topics. We don't want to ask people about them because we don't want to upset them. But maybe what we're concerned about a little bit is not pushing ourselves into a vulnerable zone as opposed to pushing the griever, because people who are grieving feel very isolated in their grief. They feel cut off. And what they want, what at least most of the people we talked to wanted, was connection. They were yearning for connection, but they need the rest of us to step up instead of stepping back.
Was any of this looking at sort of needs being met in the workplace around grief, or was it, as you're suggesting, sort of more socially how we all respond to this in each other?
Well, it's interesting you raise that. I mean, the people who feel well supported, the primary sources of support are coming from family and then from friends. But, coworkers also play a role. But we did look at a bunch of sort of more institutional supports, such as churches, family doctors, and one of them was employment assistance programs. And although many people felt that they were helped by employment assistance programs, it was one of the least effective forms of support that we saw. So, I mean, it does raise a question about, what is it about those formal structures in the workplace? And, when you think about the workplace, a lot of people only get a few days off or maybe a week off. And you get a week off for something that, for the death of somebody close to you, if they're family. You don't get a week off if it's a friend, and you certainly, there's no tradition of getting time off. For example, if you've had a miscarriage or a stillbirth, or certainly if you've lost a pet or something like that. So, in the workplace is not a particularly supportive environment. The Canadian Grief Alliance backed a change in the law that was successful at the federal level to expand bereavement time off, but we're probably not as supportive as we could be in the workplace.
When it comes to grief and experiences like survivor's guilt, what kind of feelings and responses seem to be lesser noticed, did you hear from people?
Well, I think that we have a tendency in our society to think that there's one response to loss, and that's sorrow. Grief equals sorrow. But in fact, we see actually a whole range of emotions, and guilt is one of them, anger, and then other things that are, I don't know if they're emotions, irritability, sleeplessness. People lose their appetites. There are all kinds of other features of grief, and because we tend to sort of focus on sorrow and expect the grieving to express sorrow, but not to express anger or guilt, other kinds of emotions, numbness, for example. That is another form of isolation of the grieving. I lost my wife to breast cancer some years ago, and our kids were in their 14 and 18, and really grief was a foreign country to us. Like we were not prepared for it. We didn't really understand what was happening to us.
I'm sorry for your loss. In our last minute here, I just want to make sure I ask you about what you think should change, because I understand you think this should be taught.
Yeah, I think that, three components quickly. We need public education so that grievers understand their own experience and the people around them can support them. Number two, we need better education because social workers, family doctors, paramedics, nurses, other people who come in contact routinely with the grieving don't necessarily have much education in it. And third, we need supports for not everybody has a rich social network around them, and we need more institutional support. So we need helplines, we need websites, we need counselors, we need peer counseling groups. We need all kinds of other supports.
Educational page. Thank you very much, Paul, for being with us today. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Paul Adams, co-chair of the Canadian Grief Alliance. It's so interesting, hey, how people grieve and mourn their dead also can be so connected to our cultural or religious identities as well, when you're thinking about where those supports come from. And then other people, are left alone in their grief. If you want to weigh in, give us a call. Let's get to headlines now. Heather Wells is in.
Good morning. Well, progressive conservatives in Tuxedo have made their choice to succeed former Premier Heather Stephenson as an MLA. Family lawyer Lawrence Pinsky is going to run for the PCs in next month's by-election in Tuxedo. An affordable housing co-op in Brandon worries it may not be able to maintain all of its units. Sprucewood Housing Co-op says its buildings need about $2.5 million in repairs. It recently signed a new deal with Manitoba Housing, which will cover operating costs for 5 years, but the management there says it's not enough to guarantee low rents for that affordable housing facility. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 7:30.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
50 to 60 millimeters of rain expected. It's steady in Winnipeg right now. So this warning is the southern part of the province and around the border as well. So this is going to be through tomorrow afternoon. Wet, wet, wet. Churchill, fog advisory and traffic at Jackknife Semi could still be having issues there. The Cloverleaf that takes you westbound number 1 to the northbound east perimeter. So people are sneaking around on the shoulder carefully. Call us with any updates, please. 788-3093. It's 6 right now, temperature-wise in Winnipeg. We're going to be 8 later. Well, if you can't wait for Pride next month, we got you covered this weekend. We're going to hear about the Queer Arts Festival. Also, hundreds of trail runners are going to head to the White Shell also this weekend in a grueling race called Suffer on Centennial. And we're going to touch base with the St. James in Winnipeg, the St. James neighborhood area homeowner who's concerned about heavy rain today because last week already had some flooding.
On the Current. It has been 4 years since the murder of George Floyd at the hands of police. Since then, his uncle, Selwyn Jones, has committed his life to fighting for racial justice. But that road has not been smooth. Selwyn Jones coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland. And on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Peter Cowan in St. John's. A bipartisan group of U.S. senators is calling on Canada to boost defense spending. It sent a sharply worded letter to Ottawa yesterday, urging the federal government to meet its NATO commitments. Let's bring in Janice McGregor from our Parliamentary Bureau. Janice, what exactly does the letter say?
Well, it opens by laying out how NATO is facing what they call one of the most severe threat landscapes in its history. And from there, the 23 senators from both sides of the aisle in Washington lay out how, notwithstanding the important contributions Canada's made, leading the battle group in Latvia, for example, in their eyes, it still falls short. Their focus is squarely on Canada's failure to meet its spending obligations, only budgeted to hit 1.7% of Canada's gross domestic product in 2029. That's 5 years after NATO allies were supposed to hit a 2% target. Bill Blair, Canada's defence minister, was in Washington just last week. He laid out Canada's future plans in meetings with his counterpart, Lloyd Austin, and other senior officials on Parliament Hill yesterday. He continued to give assurances that Canada is stepping up.
We know that Canada needs to invest in other capabilities that are not yet included in this year's budget, but are inevitably part of the investment that we're going to have to make. But it's important those investments be made well.
Why might the senators be sending this letter now?
Well, it suggests some might not like what they heard from Blair last week. The next NATO summit will be hosted by the Americans in Washington in July. It often falls to the host to set the tone, and in this case, it might include more nagging for people not keeping up. It's also an election year, and threats to hold Canada accountable for not spending more do ebb and flow in official Washington, depending on who's talking and what domestic interests are pressuring them. The current administration's usually nowhere near this harsh. Last month, for example, President Joe Biden's ambassador in Ottawa, David Cohen, said he looks at a wide range of factors when he measures Canada's contribution, not only this percentage, but its overall trajectory, which is going up.
Janice McGregor in Ottawa, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford is expected to announce today that some alcoholic drinks are going to become more widely available sooner than expected. Sources say that beer, wine, and ready-to-drink cocktails will be sold at licensed convenience stores, supermarkets, and gas stations, possibly as early as this August. That would be ahead of the previous target date of 2026. An estimated 8,500 new stores across the province will be licensed to sell the beverages. Israel Defense Forces says it recovered the bodies of 3 more hostages overnight from Gaza. It says they were killed during the October 7th attack and had their bodies taken to the Strip. The announcement comes less than a week after the army said it found the bodies of 3 other Israeli hostages killed on October 7th. Hamas-led militants killed around 1,200 people, mainly civilians, and abducted around 250 others on that day. We're watching the World Court this morning and an upcoming decision from the International Court of Justice. In a few hours, it will rule whether Israel should stop its offensive in Rafah. The case was brought forward by South Africa, which is pursuing a separate legal action at the court accusing Israel of genocide. Julia Chapman reports.
South Africa says events in Gaza have shocked the conscience of humanity. It's calling for Israeli troops to withdraw from Rafah, where they began an offensive earlier this month. It has also requested the court order a ceasefire and allow unhindered access for aid workers and journalists. Israeli government spokesman Avi Hyman is defiant.
No power on earth will stop Israel from protecting its citizens and going after Hamas in Gaza. We will destroy Hamas. We will return peace and security to the people of Israel and to the people of Gaza.
Israel has called the case unfounded and South Africa's arguments false and biased. Rulings from the ICJ are legally binding but difficult to enforce. But a decision critical of Israel could increase its isolation. And it's not the only court scrutinizing Israel's actions in Gaza. Earlier this week, the International Criminal Court requested arrest warrants for Israel's Prime Minister and Defense Minister, along with 3 Hamas leaders. In a separate case in January, the ICJ ordered Israel to prevent a genocide in Gaza, but it stopped short of declaring that one was already being committed. Julia Chapman for CBC News, London.
In Papua New Guinea, a desperate search is underway following a landslide that has killed at least 100 people. A mountain collapsed onto homes in 6 remote villages as people were sleeping. Government officials have sent in a response team to start providing relief and recover bodies. The collapse has cut off a major road used by residents to get supplies. Villagers say the number of those killed could be much higher. Taiwan is responding to China's military drills around the island. Taiwan is deploying fighter jets and activating its mobile air defense system. Taipei says the move is to monitor Beijing's war games. For 2 days now, Chinese forces have been simulating a full-scale invasion of Taiwan, including mock bombings. The military drills come just days after the inauguration of Taiwan's new president. Beijing says the exercises are punishment for Taiwan electing a troublemaker. Police in the Australian state of Victoria are apologizing for their role in what's known as the stolen generations. For more than a century, police and other authorities forcibly removed Aboriginal children from their families, part of the controversial plan to assimilate them. Freelance reporter Phil Mercer has more from Sydney.
This apology is long overdue.
Victoria's Chief Police Commissioner Shane Patton says he's sorry for one of the most shameful parts in Australia's modern history.
I'm here with you today to formally and unreservedly apologise to survivors of the stolen generations for the role of Victoria Police in the forcible removal of Aboriginal children from their families, culture and country.
Indigenous elders say the Commissioner's contrition is momentous. They've compared it to a national apology made by Australia's former Prime Minister Kevin Rudd a decade and a half ago. Between the 1860s and the 1970s, governments, churches, welfare agencies and the police took many Indigenous children against their will from their families. They went to orphanages or to live with white families. They became known as the stolen generations. Campaigners say they were victims of a policy rooted in white supremacy. It asserted that the lives of the Aboriginal children would improve if they were assimilated into colonial society. Today's apology is part of a series of commitments Victoria Police has made in response to Australia's truth-telling inquiry last year. Phil Mercer for CBC News, Sydney.
And finally,
my oldest son and I were out driving around just checking fields, see where we could start seeding, and we came across the largest object. Originally, we just thought it was garbage.
That's Barry Sawchuk, a farmer in rural Saskatchewan, talking about a 2-meter wide, 40-kilogram piece of space junk he found in his field. It's from a SpaceX launch. Experts are concerned that this is happening more often. Senior science reporter Nicole Martellero tells us more.
Ignition, engine full power, and
a decade ago, it was rare to hear of space debris reaching the ground. But now, more launches mean more space junk.
10, 9.
Cassandra Steer, the chair and founder of the Australian Centre for Space Governance.
Since 1957, when Sputnik was launched, the first 50 years, there were something like 2,000 launches in total. These days, we're seeing 1,000 launches per year.
There are now roughly 9,000 satellites orbiting Earth. And while most of them will burn up when they re-enter Earth's atmosphere, some larger pieces of the rockets they launched on may not. These pieces of debris are ending up around the world. In the U.S., in Australia, India, parts of Africa, and here in Canada.
Whether this is insulation, I have no idea. Don't build spaceships for a living, I farm.
There's a fear that someday a piece of debris may slam into a person rather than a farmer's field. Ewan Wright is a junior fellow at the Outer Space Institute.
And so we estimate that the chance of somebody getting hit by one of the rocket bodies over the next 10 years to be about 20 to 30%. So that works out about 3 or 4% chance each year that someone somewhere will get hit by a piece of space debris.
While there are a few UN treaties governing space operations, some experts worry that not enough is being done about the space debris that is rapidly accumulating around Earth. Nicole Martellero, CBC News, Toronto.
And that's the latest national, international, and space news from World Report. I'm Peter Cowan.
Man, it is raining in downtown Winnipeg. Some people are just giving up. Hoods are off, hair is just wet. And if some of them were wearing jackets, they're just sort of covered in rain and sticking to them. Few umbrellas up out there, out our studio window. This rain's going to continue with us all across southern Manitoba and down to the border, and we're getting 50 to 60 millimeters, and so it has begun. Hi, everybody. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. You're on our Friday morning show here on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. Well, this hour in the show, we're going to talk to someone who's going to be stressed about all this rain because they already flooded last week in their basement. One of the homeowners in St. James that has been anxiously watching the sky. We're going to find out what's happening in that part of town. In addition, hundreds of trail runners will head to the Whiteshell this weekend for a grueling race called Suffer on Centennial. Some of them will run 100K. We'll hear about it. And also this weekend, the Queer Arts Festival is on. We're going to learn more about that if you want to check it out. Next on CBC, though, let's get into headlines with Heather Wells.
Good morning. Lawrence Pinsky has been chosen to represent the Progressive Conservatives in next month's Tuxedo by-election. The family lawyer says he was motivated to run in part because of the conflict in Israel. He says he tried convincing others he knew to run for Heather Stephenson's old seat, but they were reluctant because of what he says is a rising tide of anti-Semitism and intolerance. Raising awareness of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls through music.
We thought a song would be a powerful message, especially a song that is written and created by students.
Strathcona school teacher Peter Grozdanovich, whose students created a music video. It was, among other projects, showcased yesterday at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights as part of Be an Upstander. We're going to hear about that event in our next local news at 7:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, Abby Adeyemi, look at it coming down out there, huh?
Yeah, I just made a peek right now. The rain has started. That's what I'll tell you. First, it was light the last hour, but it has started now, and it's going to be with us for like a day or two. We've got like rainfall warning that's, it's covering much of southern Manitoba, and we're expecting about 50 to 60 millimeters. That would include the Winnipeg area here. Right now, Winnipeg, it is wet, 5 degrees. We're in for a wet one. We should be seeing heavy one at times, and it will be breezy also with that wind coming from the northeast, becoming stronger later this morning and then shifting to the north in the afternoon period. The temperature will remain steady near 8 degrees, and tonight the rain will continue with additional 10 millimeters expected, with the winds picking up and becoming quite windy around midnight, and the temperatures will dip to around 4 degrees. Just a sneak peek into tomorrow, it will also be periods of rain, and then it's going to taper off later in the afternoon.
Yeah, gotta wait. Gonna have a day and a half of this.
A day and a half, yeah.
Lots coming. Thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Corey, you want to go out there with a mic and report?
Yeah, there is 100% chance that it is raining now, Marcy.
Totally. I always think it's interesting, and this is a classic reporter thing, and we still continue to do it, and I get it, but when you watch the reporter right in the middle of the wind's blowing and the rain's coming, and they're standing there on television saying you shouldn't go out in this. All right, let's get into what's happening in traffic. We actually have an issue that popped up early this morning, and it's at a Cloverleaf.
Yeah, I got a call about an hour ago from Maria and also David as well. A jackknife semi right on that Cloverleaf from westbound number 1 that takes you on to the northbound east perimeter. There's a jackknife semi blocking pretty much the whole thing. David did say you can kind of creep around it, but it is a little bit sketchy, so do be careful, or you may just have to wait. There's that option as well. So that may be causing some backups as traffic picks up this morning. I'd love to get an update on that, actually, because that was an hour ago that I did get that call, so I'm curious to see what's changed. But if you do see anything else going on out there, haven't heard of anything, curious what the underpasses are looking like right now, if there's water starting to build up there. I know Waverly about a week ago after a big rain was pretty full, pretty flooded. But if you do see something else, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
Well, the queer community is inviting you to join them in celebrating drag art. Synonym Art Consultation is once again hosting the Queer Arts Festival, and it starts today. There are events that the whole family can take part in. Andrew Eastman is co-director of Gorge Queer Arts and Drag Festival and Synonym Art Consultation. He's going to take us through what we can expect, as well as some changes to the weekend that have happened. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
So for people who haven't participated before, tell us more about the Queer Arts Festival.
Yeah, so it's called Gorge. This is actually our 4th year celebrating. It started actually the fully online digital festival during the beginning of the pandemic, and now we're able to move out into more in-person events, of course. So it's really a celebration of the legacy, the present, and the future of 2S LGBTQIA+ art here on Treaty 1. You can expect all different kinds of events, as you mentioned, a big focus on free, family-friendly programming. It's a little bit of an alternative to what is often considered pride events, which are late-night events at the club sometimes. So these are more events that everyone can come to and experience art in different locations.
Can you mention a couple of the locations and things that are going on? What type of art will be showcased?
Absolutely. So we were planning on having our kickoff event today, but as you were just mentioning about the weather, it is very rainy outside.
Yeah.
So we have postponed our first event to Thursday, although we have an event before then, which is going to be on Sunday now at the Forks. We're hosting a drag brunch right in the middle of the market there. It's a free, family-friendly event. We encourage all to come down and get some food at the Forks, and there'll be drag performances and music. And then that postponed art party we're hosting at Willow Press in Osborne Village, which is a queer-owned bookshop. We're actually painting a brand new mural all on the facade of the building. And we're going to have some drag performances as well as a interactive art workshop for the public. We're going to have local artist Kelly Campbell, who's designed a print that says "Respect Trans Kids." You can bring your own T-shirt or paper down and get it printed for free. So you can gear up for the Pride season ahead. And then our last event is on Friday, May 31st. It's also at the Forks in their event space. There's a lot going on in that event. There's going to be drag, there's going to be discussion, there's going to be performances, workshops, music. And yeah, those are all our big three events.
Is that event the Kiki Ballroom event?
Yes.
Okay. Kiki, educate me.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm no scholar in the subject for sure, and that is what this event is about. So it's called Let's Have a Kiki. And Kiki refers to the idea of an emerging, what's called ballroom scene or ball culture. So this is a culture that comes from Black and Latinx communities in the States, primarily New York, and in the past. A lot of our culture, things like voguing, drag, a lot of our lingo and fashion and music come from this really important queer scene. So Winnipeg has a little bit of a history in that scene, but we are looking to formalize that a bit more into something like a Toronto has or a New York has to host these ballroom events. So we are working with some folks from Toronto who are on their Kiki Ball Association board, and they are going to be having a panel discussion with us here to talk about the legacy of what Winnipeg has and how we can move forward to establish this scene here in Winnipeg.
In your view, Andrew, you said this is the 4th edition of the festival. You're talking about the legacy and growth moving forward. What have you learned about your community since starting this 4 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, we've been rooted in the queer arts community for quite a long time, and we've always been educated on and reminded that this scene is really rooted on the work of Two-Spirit and Indigenous drag and queer artists on our scene. And that's something that really sets our community apart from a lot of other drag scenes across the country. Ours is just so special here. The drag community is very grassroots, very focused on lifting everyone up together as opposed to a sort of hierarchical, same competitive-based model. We really are working on fundraising, working with community organizations, and bringing drag into all different kinds of aspects of our life throughout society.
How do you describe why it's important to celebrate drag-based art?
I mean, it is truly the most pure expression of freedom. So we really want to show that this art form that was once very relegated to late nights in the club, kind of were once illegal. These are art forms that really should be brought out into the light, and they can really help folks explore potentially their own expressions of gender, their own artistic expressions, but also just to give a platform to these artists who are really some of the hardest working artists. We work with all kinds of visual artists, musicians, and drag artists are a big pillar of who we work with, and they are some of the hardest working, making their own clothes, making their own wigs, doing their own makeup, and performing and dancing. They really do it all. So it's very exciting programming.
Pride Month officially does begin next month. What's the mood been like for the queer community as we get ready for that in our province?
I mean, I think, honestly, this rain today, it's supposed to be the kickoff today of Pride season. And honestly, it's really getting me excited because, you know, our rainbow's really going to shine after this rainstorm. It is, of course, Pride is always a political action first. So there will be that heart of that at all that we do at Gorge as well as Pride. But it is also a time of celebration. In Winnipeg, it is an early Pride season, so we really get to kick off our entire summer with this very busy time, and it is particularly a busy time for any 2S LGBTQIA plus organizers and artists, so make sure to give them a lot of extra love as we go into this very, very busy season.
And just last, I guess, because you were talking about the ballroom event and the other events and everything, you're talking about the color and the importance of fashion and voguing, and people might be wondering if they're coming out, what they should wear.
Absolutely. So, of course, just wear whatever makes you feel the best at any of these events. Specifically for the ballroom event on Friday, May 31st, we are co-presenting that event with Cluster Festival, so there are some tickets available on their website. And the theme of the event is Queer Futures, because we are doing this kind of consultation to look at the future of what's happening in our scene here.
So you can be creative with that. I like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Leave us quickly with the website or the Facebook page where people can get more information about all this.
Yeah, you can follow all of our activities at synonymartconsultation.com, or on Instagram you can look for Gorge Festival. And then the tickets are available at clusterfestival.com.
Have an awesome event, series of events, and a great weekend once this all dries out. Take care.
Thank you, Marcy. Bye-bye.
Thank you. That's Andrew Eastman, co-director of Gorge Queer Arts and Drag Festival and Synonym Art Consultation. Number of events starting through this weekend and into next week. Time right now is 7:22 a.m. We've got sports coming up in a few minutes. You're on CBC as the rain continues to come down in downtown Winnipeg.
It's been raining hard in Winnipeg, like where you've gone. So I am gonna write a song to soothe my aching. For 2 whole days the rain came down, and I've been thinking round to when I was too young to see my heart was breaking. Oh baby, I can't stay here in the rain another day. Though I've been trying to find a way to make it happen. Lately I've been trying to figure what it's all about, and when I know I'll work it out, but now I'm getting out of the rain. Out of the rain is where I'm headed for, far from the pain of being tied to your back door. Oh, I know that it's not something that I can control, so I'll go, but you go on in the rain. I've been wandering thirsty in the rain for so long now, but it ain't of the amount, but where I'm standing. In the sunshine I will see much clearer just what I can do. I'll keep it simple, free and true. I can do what I want to do. Out of the rain is where I'm headed for, far from the pain of being tied to your back door. Take it slow, love yourself, or you can't love no one else. Oh, I know I can't go on in the rain. Out of the rain, no hurting anymore. Into the sun, to find what I've been yearning for. Take it slow, love yourself, or you can't love no one else. Oh, I know I can't go on
The Ducks, lots of mentions of Winnipeg in there, of course, local group out of the rain. Well, you're not going to get out of it till tomorrow afternoon with this rainfall warning firmly in place. It's pouring downtown. Naomi called actually saying lots of big puddles on northbound Kenaston between Grant and Tuxedo, lots of hydroplaning, and it looks like pedestrians have given up this morning outside our studio window. There's no umbrellas. People are just walking and getting drenched. This guy's got his hood up. He's trying. Let's get to morning sports here and start in the NHL. The Edmonton Oilers taking Game 1 of the Western Conference Final, and Paul McGowan's here to talk about it. Hello.
Good morning. Yeah, a thrilling game last night after a late Dallas goal forced overtime in this one. A game ended up needing a second period of OT, and it's Connor McDavid who ends it, a 3-2 final and a 1-0 series lead for Edmonton. Now, McDavid did seal the win, but early in the first OT was nearly responsible for giving the game away, took a 4-minute high sticking penalty. He was asked after the game to comment on his time in the box while the game hung in the balance.
Long, really long, really long, miserable. I hated every second of it. My thing was, I don't know what I'm supposed to do there. I am going forward, trying to play the puck. It feels like he's holding my stick, and then it feels like his face. I didn't even really feel the high stick at all. You know, I think maybe his face even comes down on my stick. So not sure what I was supposed to do. Maybe just unlucky, I guess. You know, but certainly glad the boys killed it off.
I think we call that the McDavid defense going forward. My stick didn't hit his face hit my stick. Some tense moments in overtime for sure, but the Oilers steal home ice advantage from the Stars. Game 2 goes on Saturday.
Let's switch gears for just a second. We could be on the verge of a big change for U.S. college athletes.
A change, that's been talked about for some time now. Athletes.
Show me the money!
Yeah, exactly. I mean, athletes have always been allowed to play for scholarships, but schools earn billions of dollars off of the backs of student athletes. And so there are multiple active suits against the NCAA that are pushing for a cut of the money or for the right to earn money from endorsement deals. And so yesterday, the NCAA and 5 of its biggest conferences signed off on a deal that would change the rules around compensation. It would also dispense close to $3 billion to current and former athletes. Exciting news for those athletes, but sport legal reporter Michael McMahon notes that the settlement is far from a done deal.
This settlement is a contract. It's not precedent. Member schools could say, wait a second, we didn't agree to this. You rushed this through, NCAA. The power conferences rushed it through. We're having to foot the bill. We didn't get a fair say. They could seek potentially restraining orders. So there are all sorts of areas of turbulence that could present themselves.
Yeah, lots of details still to work out, including, importantly, whether this new compensation model would provide equal pay for male and female athletes. Lots to watch as we wait and see whether a federal judge will sign off on this agreement.
And finally, some interesting moments from last night's Jays game.
A power outage at Comerica Park, or at least at parts of Comerica Park in Detroit, led to the Jays broadcast being down for a bit. And as the Blue Jays TV crew tried to troubleshoot what was going on, the only option for sound when the video feed came back was to have play-by-play guy Dan Shulman broadcast from his cell phone.
Tyler Falefa puts a charge into one. Deep left field, and it is gone. And the Blue Jays have a 1-0 lead. I'm glad we both charged our phones. So we've got enough charge to make this work here tonight.
Doesn't sound that bad, all things considered. I know that my 4-year-old cell phone would not have the charge to make it through an entire game. Shulman did okay. Had to call the game that way into the 6th inning. Did get his microphone back in time to call 8 Blue Jay runs over the final 3 innings. A 9-1 final for the Jays, and they've got 3 more in Detroit this weekend.
All right. Well, speaking of weekends, you have a good one. Thank you.
You too, Marcy. Thanks.
That's Paul McGowan with Morning Sports. Rain continues to fall in Winnipeg. 788-3093 with commute updates. We'll have a full traffic report coming up. And we're also going to talk about this weekend, a special event. Hundreds of trail runners are going to be heading to the White Shell for a grueling race. Some of them are running 100K. We're going to hear from someone who signed up for it. Right now, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it is a wet 5 degrees. Got galoshes? You'll need to be waterproof this weekend in Winnipeg. Rain at times heavy. It's going to be windy as well today. The temperature sticking close to 8 degrees. Well, southern Manitoba is already getting drenched, and this is just the start of this system that's going to linger until late tomorrow. Rainfall could add up to 50 or 60 millimeters, enough for the province to issue an overland flood warning. Heavy rain can cause water to back into basements and sewage to be released into the rivers. Last week, more than 20 megaliters of sewage was released into the river because of the wet weather. So far, the weather station in Miami, Manitoba, is reporting the most precipitation from this system early on. Already, almost 23 millimeters of rain. Winnipeg's received around 6 millimeters by 7 this morning. The province says before this storm, soil moisture levels were about normal, which means once the ground gets saturated, we could see some overland flooding. Progressive Conservatives in Tuxedo have made their choice to succeed former Premier Heather Stephenson as the MLA for their area. Lawrence Pinsky is going to run for the PCs in next month's by-election. And as CBC's Ian Fraze explains, he marked his nomination victory half a world away.
While Lawrence Pinsky's family and friends were at Varsity View Community Center celebrating his nomination, he was fast asleep, thousands of kilometers away. Pinsky was in Israel because of the sudden death of a family friend. He made the trip before the NDP called the by-election earlier than many expected. So the PCs moved up their Tuxedo nomination meeting, and Pinsky was left to celebrate his victory from afar. In an interview through FaceTime, Pinsky credited his team of volunteers. He said the conflict in Israel partially led him to run. Pinsky said the rising tide of anti-Semitism must be stopped. Tuxedo is usually a safe Tory seat, but the NDP made it close in last year's election, coming within 300 votes. Ian Fraze, CBC News, Winnipeg.
An affordable housing co-op in Brandon hopes new provincial funding will help it stay afloat. Spruce Woods Housing Co-op has inked a 5-year deal with Manitoba Housing to help cover the costs of operations. Manager Ava Cameron says the funding will help co-op stay affordable for its 160 residents. But the 39-year-old building still needs millions in repairs to keep a quarter of the 81 units open.
Hope is that we're going to be able to get some capital funding to fix our buildings before we have to say, that we're going to have to shut 28 townhouses down and displace people, because the longer we wait, the longer we, leave it, the worse they're getting.
Cameron and Manitoba Housing would not disclose how much funding the co-op will be getting for operations, but Cameron says the co-op needs at least $2.5 million for repairs. A deportation hearing is scheduled today for the truck driver responsible for the Humboldt Broncos bus crash. Jaskurat Singh Sidhu was sentenced to 8 years in prison for his role in that 2018 crash. He was granted full parole last year. However, a criminal conviction that carries a sentence of more than 6 months makes a permanent resident ineligible to remain in Canada. 16 people were killed, 13 were injured when a transport truck driven by Sidhu struck the Humboldt Broncos team bus near Armley, Saskatchewan. In Papua New Guinea, a desperate search is underway following a landslide that may have killed as many as 100 people. A mountain collapsed onto several homes as people were sleeping. The country's prime minister is offering his heartfelt condolences. Government officials have sent in a response team to do an impact assessment. That collapse has cut off a major road used by residents to get supplies. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. A music video to raise awareness of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. That music video was created by grade 5 students at Strathcona School. Their project was part of a showcase at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights yesterday. Their teacher, Peter Grozdanovich, says work started on the project last year.
We thought a song would be a powerful message, especially a song that is written and created by students. And so then we paired up with musicians and video editors and graphic designers, and we collaborated together to create this amazing piece of music.
More than 70 students from various schools took part in the showcase yesterday. Their projects all touched on different rights topics and encouraged people to be upstanders, which is the name of that event. You can find more on that story as well as other news from Manitoba. All you have to do is go to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Yeah, you know what? That song, honestly, it's
so beautiful.
Oh, it's so moving that the
and
kids
haunting
wrote.
in a way. Yeah, beautiful.
I have to say, switching gears here for a sec, Heather, the line of the morning so far is yours. Got galoshes.
I was trying to, how many different ways can you say wet, right?
I'm thinking about all my old uncles. All my old uncles when I was growing up would snap those rubber things onto their dress shoes.
Oh my goodness, remember?
Yeah, remember those from the 80s? That's like such a vivid memory. I don't know if they work much. They're not going to work this morning.
I think you would need
yeah.
Remember, and my grandma used to always put like this, I know someone who works with us actually uses it. They're plastic hair bonnets.
Oh, yes. They're hard to find.
Yeah, they really are.
Actually, yeah. They're kind of, completely. It looks like a shower cap, but
yes.
Yeah, they're really, really handy. But
it would be essential today.
Yeah, it will be essential. A lot of people are just even giving up on the umbrellas. Although I have to say, Abby, one just went by our studio window here on Portage Avenue. It was a leopard umbrella. Was that yours?
The leopard print, I had to double check because I used to have one. But it's more of those little foldable ones you can put in your pocket.
We were joking this morning about whether or not you bother to use an umbrella, and it seems a lot of people don't. And Abby said why he doesn't is because he forgets it everywhere. He would leave it behind everywhere he goes.
It's a donation.
Yeah, maybe. So that wasn't yours, though.
That wasn't mine.
Okay. Well, let us know if you see someone with an umbrella of yours going by, and we'll pop out and get it for you. So it is dry in here, really wet out there, and more rain coming.
Yeah, wet outside, 5 degrees already in Winnipeg. We expect a wet and breezy day with heavy rain, totaling 30 to 40 millimeters, and temperatures will hold steady near 8 degrees. Tonight, the rain will continue with another 10 millimeters expected, becoming windy and then dropping to a low of 4 degrees. And tomorrow, we're going to see more periods of rain, and then it's going to be ending in the afternoon, leaving us with cloudy skies. And we'll see a high of 8. Heading west to Brandon now, currently 4 degrees with light rain. Now that rain will become heavy and it's going to be mixing with some snow this afternoon for folks in Brandon. You're going to be seeing about 40 to 50 millimeters, and your temperature also will hold steady just like Winnipeg, near 8 degrees. And talking about snow, we got a message from our friend Deb Bush at the Turtle Mountain area, and Deb reported light snow also in that area, as you can see on our YouTube page there. That's the light snow Deb sent in pictures of the current situation along the Turtle Mountain. As we move north to Thompson, it's currently 3 degrees and mostly cloudy. We're expecting cloudy skies today for that region, and the highs will touch 10 degrees. Farther north in Churchill, currently -4. We're seeing freezing fog, and that fog is causing near zero visibilities, but should be dissipating late this morning, and then you will be seeing a mix of sun and cloud. The high will touch 7. Down in Dauphin, it is 6 degrees. Gimli is at 5 degrees, seeing a light rainfall. We have a rainfall warning for Dauphin, Gimli, Steinbach, Morris, all hovering around 6 and 8 degrees. But for Winnipeg, we are at 5, and we're heading to a high of 8.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Traffic update from Corey.
Yeah, about an hour and a half ago, heard from Maria. This may still be a problem. The jackknife semi on that Cloverleaf, blocking the entire Cloverleaf, actually, from that takes you from westbound number 1 to northbound east perimeter. So that may be causing issues for folks this morning. Did hear from David, who also called that you can kind of sneak around, but you got to be really, really careful to sneak around that. Also got a call from Naomi, who says northbound Route 90, big puddles between Grant and Tuxedo, lots of hydroplaning, and I imagine because it's Route 90, you're probably like, is there a pothole underneath? Who knows? So be careful if you're going down northbound Route 90. Might be real wet and pretty hydroplany. But if you see something else going on out there, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
Does everyone know what that means? I'm just making sure, because if you have a new driver out there, like, it really means if you're going a little bit too fast, when it's this wet and the rain's coming that fast, your tires aren't going to get grip. So they're actually literally going to go right over top of the water. And it can actually be, it can be hazardous. Control, you want to slow down. I don't think people always think about slowing down in the rain, but when it's like this, you absolutely need to think about that.
100%.
Yeah. All right, let's get into what's happening this weekend. weekend for my next guest in studio and one on the phone. The name of the race speaks for itself. It's called the Suffer on Centennial. It pits trail runners against the Whiteshell's rugged, rocky, rooty, and marshy terrain. Hundreds of people are registered to run either 8, 25, 50, or 100 kilometers. Kayla Twist lives in Portage la Prairie. She's one of 56 people who's getting ready to run 100K, and she's in studio. Good morning.
Good morning.
And we're also joined on the line by Christian Andres, one of the race's co-directors. He actually is already in the Whiteshell prepping for the race tomorrow. Good morning, Christian.
Good morning.
So the Suffer on Centennial, can you explain the Centennial part of it? That's the name of the part of the trail, right, Christian?
Exactly, yeah. So Centennial is a section of the Trans-Canada Trail that goes basically from Rennie to McGillivray Falls. And that section traverses a lot of really rugged terrain, rocky slabs, boreal forest, as you mentioned. It's a ton of fun, great place to go to for an adventure on the trails.
Now, I don't need you, Kayla, to explain the word suffer, because 100K to me sounds like it would be very difficult. Why did you want to do it?
Just the experience. It's a beautiful area. I've done the races out there before, the 33, the 50, so this just seemed like natural progression to see if I can suffer all the way through it.
How have you been preparing? What's your training regime been like leading up to this?
4 to 5 days a week, and my highest kilometer weeks are at about 110 kilometers, so combined with everyday life and work, it has been a juggle.
How are you feeling about the weather? Now, it's pouring this morning. We were just actually looking at the forecast. You're probably going to be running through a little bit of rain in the Whiteshell tomorrow, but then it'll calm down. That's not necessarily a bad thing, though, is it?
You know what? I was just talking to Corey, and, I'd probably take this over plus 30.
Yeah.
I think, with a change of socks and a change of shoes, it'll be manageable.
Yeah, fair enough. Corey, obviously an avid runner. He, I think, is taking part this weekend, too. So, Christian, the route, Kayla was talking about how beautiful it is, but what will be the real test for the runners? Is it how much do you have to pay attention to what's underfoot? And are some of the muddy sections actually going to be more difficult because it could be wet?
Yeah, absolutely. Like the terrain itself is quite rugged, and some of it is what we call technical. So like rocks, roots, you got to watch where you're placing your feet. The Canadian Shield can be a little bit slick when wet. So obviously when you're descending any hills or climbing any hills, you got to watch there. And yeah, the low spots in the Whiteshell traditionally are wet, and this will add to that to some degree for sure with the rain. I'm going to go out on the course today to do a little bit of pre-sweeping to check and make sure that conditions are still safe, of course. But yeah, there's definitely going to, as with any time you're taking on a race, and especially a race of that distance, there's always going to be adversity. But we've got a lot of durable and stubborn Manitobans out there, so it should be a lot of fun.
How long do you think it'll take you to finish, Kayla? Do you have a goal?
I'm banking on 16 hours, but if I go on the 18 hours, I'd be happy just to finish.
What do you love about doing ultra distance runs like this? What drew you to it?
Well, I do like the outdoors. Like I said, it's absolutely gorgeous out there. All runners are so kind, but the trail running community is something else. You kind of like buddy up with a distance that far, and you really get to know everybody, and it's a really amazing community.
Some people are drawn to it also for their either their physical or mental health. Or what do you feel like when you're running? Like, what is it that why is that the thing for you? And you should know that context for me. Like, I lived with a marathoner for years, so I get it. But I know it sometimes is about more than just people hear the events and the athletic challenge. But there's a lot more going on there.
It's really peaceful. Like once you get into your own rhythm or groove, people say it a lot, but it is kind of like meditating. It's very relaxing. Yeah.
For you, how much do you relate, Christian, to what Kayla is saying there about especially the ultra run distances and what draws you to them?
Yeah, like for me, it's definitely that. It's a place to just like go and forget about your daily stresses and such a sense of adventure. And that's one thing, like, sure, they're quote unquote races, but there's so much camaraderie out there. So runners running with other people. Some of my best friends are people that I went and ran races with in didn't know them at all beforehand, but when you spend a full day out adventuring with them, you get to learn a lot about people. So you develop a lot of pretty special bonds. And like Kayla said, it's a phenomenal community, and that's why we put on the events that we do, because the people in the community are so great.
And you've been doing events, Christian, for a few years now all over the province. How much has the trail running community grown in that time?
Oh, I don't want to dramatize it too much, but I would say that it's exploded. Like in Suffern Centennial, for example, the first year we had 65 people, and now we've got around 400 registered. Wow. So it's growing a lot. It's a lot of fun to see more Manitobans getting out on the trails and exploring locally. And we even have people coming from BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Ontario, a couple of different states.
Good for you.
It's cool to be able
people.
to highlight what we have here in Manitoba.
I'll tell you what I'm good at. I'm good at cheering runners on. Like I'm a master with the cowbell, you guys. If somebody wants to come to the White Shell though and cheer on a runner, what should they know about that?
Yeah, so the finish line for all of the races is at Falcon Ridge Ski Hill. There are, of course, aid stations along the courses that people can go cheer runners coming through. We have a link on our website, trailsatoba.com, that has directions to where the aid stations and such are.
Okay, super.
The very first event starts at 6 o'clock, and the last event starting is the 8 k.m. at 11 o'clock.
Well, people can check out this site. Christian, thank you for telling us all about the event. I hope you have a super successful time with it. And Kayla, finally, what do you think it's going to feel like to cross the finish line if, 100K, 16 hours is the goal?
Oh my gosh, it's going to feel phenomenal. And I've seen people get emotional at the end, and I kind of picture that, actually.
Good luck. Have a wonderful run.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
That's Kayla Twist in studio. She's running 100K tomorrow through the Suffern Centennial Trail race in the White Shell. Check out the website. Christian Andres has been with us. He's already out in the White Shell planning. He's one of the race's co-directors.
Driving down a dirt road in your mama's car. Find a place to park and let the engine run, so we can talk about the future. We'll push up Beamer with the top down, yeah, let's ride. The lies that we were sold, you can't return them, no, but they don't mind growing old. On your passenger side, stepping on the gas, even if we crash, I would feel no pain and just enjoy the ride. When I'm with you, it's a joyride, drives me crazy every time, singing me lovesick lullabies, cut the brakes, my ride or die. When I'm with you, it's a joyride, drives me crazy every time, singing me lovesick lullabies, cut the brakes, my ride or die. Never looking back now, leave it all behind. I just wanna ride until the sun goes down, and when the stars come out, we'll crack a window and let the wind blow. Getting lost in the moonlight, been up and down these roads, but anywhere we go, I still feel at home. On your passenger side, stepping on the gas, even if we crash, I would feel no pain and just enjoy the ride. When I'm with you, it's a joyride, drives me crazy every time, singing me lovesick lullabies, cut the brakes, my ride or die. When I'm with you, it's a joyride, drives me crazy every time, singing me lovesick lullabies, cut the brakes, my ride or die. When I'm with you, it's a joyride, drives me crazy every time, singing me lovesick lullabies, cut the brakes, my ride or die. When I'm with you, it's a joyride, drives me crazy every time, singing me lovesick lullabies, cut the brakes, my ride or die. When I'm with you, it's a joyride, drives me crazy every time, singing me lovesick lullabies, cut the brakes, my ride or die. When I'm with you, it's a joyride, drives me crazy every time, singing me lovesick lullabies, cut the brakes, my ride or die. Joyride every time, when I'm with you, it's a joyride.
Coleman Helen Joyride from the new album of the same name. It's out now if you want to check it out. It is 11 minutes to 8 o'clock. Coming up after 8 on the program, after surviving a near drowning in the Red River, an experienced boater says she wants to share the importance of wearing a life jacket. It's something that sometimes you take for granted, especially if you're out in the water all the time. She won't after what happened to her, and we'll hear her story coming up. It is, as mentioned, coming up to 8 o'clock here, 10-2 right now. We have a fog advisory for Churchill this morning, and then southern Manitoba, of course, it's all about this rain. Rainfall warning continues today through tomorrow afternoon, 50 to 60 millimeters expected. Winnipeg included in this. It starts with 30 to 40. It's raining really hard in downtown Winnipeg currently, and it's just going to stay with us. Well, my next guest is not happy to see the rain falling. Winnipegger Jennifer Shepard couldn't help but panic when she saw Environment Canada's forecast calling for all this. She says that it's the last thing she needs. Last Thursday, she came home to discover her basement was overflowing with murky water and sewage, and that was caused by last week's heavy rainstorm. She lives in the city on Truro Street in St. James. Now, at first, she says she thought the incident was a one-off. Maybe she was just unlucky, but then she started to talk to her neighbors on her street and realized that maybe not so much, and she's in studio. Good morning.
Good morning.
So tell me, first of all, before I ask you about why, you're worried about this being a bigger problem, take me to last week. So where were you when you discovered, we got water?
Yeah, I had just gotten home from work. I'd picked up my kids from daycare. I was letting the dog out in the backyard, and we have like a staircase that goes to our basement. And I just happened to glance, and it was like your heart completely stops, your stomach drops, and you're thinking, is that what I think it is? Is that like, it looks like there's a lot of water down there, but I'm going to go down and check it out. And I walked down the stairs, took a look at the basement, and it was everywhere. It was a couple of inches of water all over the ground. I was terrified. I had never experienced that. So the worst goes through your mind. Like, if I step down into the water, are there electrical outlets that are covered? Am I going to get electrocuted? Like, actual panic. Just phoning all the family that, of course, rushed to my side. My parents came to pick up the kids and the dog. I'm thinking, I can't have them in the house right now. I need to calm down.
Figure it out.
And I need to figure this out.
What did the water look and smell like?
It wasn't like a horrific smell. It smelled murky, and to me, I was like, okay, is this sewage or is this just gray water and dirty water? And we kept going back and forth on what it could be, because it does have like a stink, and then the damp sort of mildew smell it's really unpleasant.
And then in the end, what was it? And when and how did you realize you weren't the only one?
It took a little bit of time, of course. It took time to sort of clear our things out and try to save what we could save. And the water sort of drained a little bit slowly, naturally, but then came back up again because the rain continued. And it was like I had texted a neighbor some pictures, and my next door neighbor does have a sump pump. Unfortunately, we don't, and a backwater valve. But even upon having those things, she was saying, well, I'm manually pumping and taking water out because my system can't keep up. So then I'm thinking, okay, so it's myself and potentially my neighbor. What does that mean? And then you start seeing people come out onto the street, across the street neighbor. Everyone's looking like they were just hit by a truck, right? Like they're walking around confused looking. And my father-in-law, who came to support us and clean up, he's a finishing carpenter. He knows his stuff. We're so lucky to have support where, he's like, okay, we can do this. We can tear out the carpet when we need to. We can rally together. But not everyone's lucky enough to have that in their family. But other neighbors were on the street, so we knew it was more than just one family.
So in your block, you're talking about multiple families that were having issues with water. Same thing.
Yeah, basically down our street, it looks like it's about half of our street. The block is between Ness and Silver, and it's looking like it's literally half of the street. So
how much is it going to cost to fix everything, do you think?
I have absolutely no idea. I know it's going to be more than my insurance will cover. It's a full basement reno. We had carpet, we had drywall, we had basically a finished basement.
What did insurance say when you called them?
Well, they sort of said it was we're going to treat this like a basic backup, and your backup coverage is $5,000. And I sort of mentioned, like, this seems to be city. This seems to be a lot of families. What happens when it's a city problem, not an independent problem? Because we realize as a homeowner, you're responsible for the pipes that are, directly on your property. But this the problem is down the street. The problem is the entire system. And they were sort of like, upon further investigation, we're going to treat this as just a basic backup. I'm not sure what investigation they did. I've got tons of pictures of the crews out on the street now. So if they need those photos for their investigation,
You have them.
I have them.
You started a Facebook group because you're thinking about this in a bigger context. Tell me more about why you describe this as a city problem and about the Facebook group.
Well, I looked at some other stories that had happened in the past, like wondering what the city's responsibility is, knowing as a homeowner, of course, you do your due diligence and you do the work you need to do if it's your issue. But when it's affecting, let's say it's 15 to 30 families, I'm not sure how many it is, but I'm trying to get that number. I've done a bit of a Facebook group. We've got 17 members actively sharing photos, and it's growing, and not everybody has Facebook, right? So I've, also included, like, please just drop this back off in my mailbox with your name if you don't have Facebook, so I know how I'm trying to count, essentially.
Has the city been helpful?
We haven't heard anything at all, like, other than calling 311. We haven't heard anything. And 311 said, well, the city will put a notice in your mailbox. There's been no notices. And different neighbors have different experiences with 311. Some of them are, putting it in as a claim. Some of them are just putting it in as like a, hey, my basement flooded for your record. Some of them are getting, like, my neighbors asked me if I'd be a witness for them for their 311. I wasn't asked to have a witness. Like, there's all different things happening, and none of us have a clear picture. None of us have heard from the city. This is what's happening.
We do have a statement I'm going to read from the city in a moment. It doesn't add a great deal. I'll just prefix it with that. But I'm wondering about how you're feeling this morning. I mean, it's pouring out there. I'm just looking out the window here. How hard was it for you to leave the house even?
I have a full day of work. Rather than dropping my kids off at my parents', they were going to babysit. My mom came to my house and I said, just keep your eyes on the basement. There's not much she can do if she notices it backs up again. I just checked the Facebook group. I called it the Truro Street Flooding Group. It's open. If anyone's hearing this and you live on the street, please join. But there's already been a mention of somebody saying, like, I have more water again this morning.
Coming in this morning.
So, I mean, yeah, we're all panicking, I'm sure.
What would you like to see be the result of this? Are you looking for compensation from the city or?
Absolutely.
Yeah. How hopeful are you that might happen?
Based on other stories I've read of similar natures, it looks like the process can take years. I would definitely love some communication and openness regarding, like, yes, this is our issue. I'm assuming the city has great insurance. I'd prefer that it wasn't our deductibles and our premiums that are affected. If I use my personal insurance, of course, my premiums will go up in the future. It just sort of affects you all around, and you realize, this is completely out of our hands. As a homeowner, we've done what we can do on our end, but this isn't our problem. So
it's interesting. We've covered in the past a number of different stories on different streets in Winnipeg that have that do have precedent for having issues. And I know the city was involved in one in Transcona, but we'll have to see whether or not your street is going to sort of match and meet the same thresholds. Thank you for coming in. I'm sorry for what happened to your basement.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me. And I do hope that we can rally together as a street. I've met so many neighbors that I had never met before, so that's nice.
That now can literally bail each other out, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Jennifer Schappert, St. James resident in studio with us. So a spokesperson for the city said in a statement to CBC they are aware of sewer backups that happened during the wet weather events last week on Truro and St. James. Crews are currently working to fix it. Last week, the city said it received 7 calls reporting sewer backup of clean water, 21 reporting sewer backup of raw sewage. So the city adds Winnipeggers concerned about water damage to their homes can file a claim by email or by calling 311. But they did not offer us any more information about what they're doing to fix things specifically and whether or not this constitutes some type of a bigger or chronic problem. So call us if you also are in a part of Winnipeg that's having problems with something like this. 788-3205 is the listener line. Heather Wells is in now with headlines.
Good morning. Well, the province has issued an overland flood warning as much of southern Manitoba is under that rainfall warning, up to 60 millimeters possible by the time this system passes late tomorrow. The province says before the storm, soil moisture levels were about normal, which means once the ground gets saturated, we could see overland flooding. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
Thank you, Heather. In Winnipeg, it's 5 degrees right now. Rain continues to fall. And a story about boating safety coming up on the program. A first-hand story from a woman who is really lucky this morning. She didn't have her life jacket on. She wants to spread awareness about the importance of wearing it after something that happened to her on a river.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
As a child, my world was forever changed.
George Miller is the mastermind behind the epic series of Mad Max films. George will tell you how his filmmaking has evolved over the past 4 decades, and he'll give you the best summary of what these movies are actually about you've ever heard. That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcast.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
It has been 4 years since the murder of George Floyd at the hands of police. Since then, his uncle, Selwyn Jones, has committed his life to fighting for racial justice, but the road has not been smooth. Selwyn Jones coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Peter Cowan in St. John's. This hour in The Hague, the International Court of Justice could order Israel to stop its offensive in Rafah. It's just starting to issue its ruling now. The case was brought forward by South Africa, which is pursuing separate legal action at the court, accusing Israel of genocide. Julia Chapman reports.
South Africa says events in Gaza have shocked the conscience of humanity. It's calling for Israeli troops to withdraw from Rafah, where they began an offensive earlier this month. It has also requested the court order a ceasefire and allow unhindered access for aid workers and journalists. Israeli government spokesman Avi Hyman is defiant.
No power on earth will stop Israel from protecting its citizens and going after Hamas in Gaza. We will destroy Hamas. We will return peace and security to the people of Israel and to the people of Gaza.
Israel has called the case unfounded and South Africa's arguments false and biased. Rulings from the ICJ are legally binding but difficult to enforce. But a decision critical of Israel could increase its isolation. And it's not the only court scrutinizing Israel's actions in Gaza. Earlier this week, the International Criminal Court requested arrest warrants for Israel's Prime Minister and Defense Minister, along with 3 Hamas leaders. In a separate case in January, the ICJ ordered Israel to prevent a genocide in Gaza, but it stopped short of declaring that one was already being committed. Julia Chapman for CBC News, London.
Israel Defense Forces say it has recovered the bodies of more hostages in Gaza.
It is with a heavy heart that I share that last night, Israeli Special Forces in Gaza rescued the bodies of our hostages, Hanania Vlonka, Michel Nissenbaum, Orion Hernandez.
IDF spokesman Daniel Hagari saying all 3 were killed during the October 7th Hamas attack and their bodies were taken to Gaza. The announcement comes less than a week after the army said it found the bodies of 3 other Israeli hostages killed on October 7th. A bipartisan group of U.S. senators is calling on Canada to boost defense spending. It sent a sharply worded letter to Ottawa yesterday urging the federal government to meet its NATO commitments. Let's bring Janice McGregor from our Parliamentary Bureau in on this. Janice, what exactly does this letter say?
Well, it opens by laying out how NATO is facing what they call one of the most severe threat landscapes in its history. And from there, the 23 senators from both sides of the aisle in Washington lay out how, notwithstanding the important contributions Canada's made, leading the battle group in Latvia, for example, in their eyes, it still falls short. Their focus is squarely on Canada's failure to meet its spending obligations, only budgeted to hit 1.7% of Canada's gross domestic product in 2029. That's 5 years after NATO allies were supposed to hit a 2% target. Bill Blair, Canada's defense minister, was in Washington just last week. He laid out Canada's future plans in meetings with his counterpart, Lloyd Austin, and other senior officials on Parliament Hill yesterday. He continued to give assurances that Canada is stepping up.
We know that Canada needs to invest in other capabilities that are not yet included in this year's budget, but are inevitably part of the investment that we're going to have to make. But it's important those investments be made well.
Why might the senators be sending this letter now?
Well, it suggests some might not like what they heard from Blair last week. The next NATO summit will be hosted by the Americans in Washington in July. It often falls to the host to set the tone, and in this case, it might include more nagging for people not keeping up. It's also an election year, and threats to hold Canada accountable for not spending more do ebb and flow in official Washington, depending on who's talking and what domestic interests are pressuring them. The current administration's usually nowhere near this harsh. Last month, for example, President President Joe Biden's ambassador in Ottawa, David Cohen, said he looks at a wide range of factors when he measures Canada's contribution, not only this percentage, but its overall trajectory, which is going up.
Janice McGregor in Ottawa, thank you.
You're welcome.
Edmonton police have charged a 40-year-old man with second-degree murder of a teenager. On Tuesday, 15-year-old Broden Radomski was attacked while walking his dog. He later died of his injuries. Radomski's family and friends are remembering him for his energy and love of life. Sam Sampson has more.
This was us this year, both in the penalty box.
Seth Matheson pulls up a photo of two teens sitting on a hockey bench. He's beside his lifelong friend, Broden Radomski. That's where you could normally find the 15-year-olds, side by side, even in a minor league hockey fight.
He was just there trying to break it up, and then somebody punched me in the face, and I wish I had the video on me.
Matheson learned of his friend's death from Radomski's grandmother. His first instinct was to reach out.
I called him, texted him, trying to make sure it wasn't true.
Police are investigating Broden's death as a homicide. They say Tuesday night, officers were called to a spot in northwest Edmonton and found the teen with life-threatening injuries. Police and paramedics tried to save him, but Broden died at the scene. 40-year-old Keith James Landry is now charged with second-degree murder. Police say the two knew each other.
Every single one of us has lost this child.
Christine Matheson is Seth's mom.
Because every time I kind of open my eyes, I see him in front of my face and I hear him up and down my halls.
An autopsy is scheduled for later today. As details continue to trickle out, Matheson is just starting to realize how life looks different now. No more sleepovers, no more Xbox.
We were actually just supposed to download a Madden, play together this weekend, and well, obviously that isn't able to happen anymore.
A lifelong friendship torn apart by violence. Sam Sampson, CBC News, Edmonton.
Canadian university administrators are pushing back against pro-Palestinian protesters. Several schools have now gone to court to try and shut down the encampments. Jennifer Yoon reports.
It's time to bring this encampment to an end.
University of Toronto President Merrick Gertler is unequivocal. Campers have until late this afternoon to consider the university's latest offer, or else
we will issue a notice of trespass and pursue any subsequent legal steps.
Gertler says he's open to disclosing the university's investments and looking into divesting, but cutting ties with Israeli institutions is off the table. In Montreal, an injunction request from Université de Québec à Montréal is being heard this morning. This after a clash between police and pro-Palestinian protesters Tuesday, filmed and posted on social media by student activist groups. UQAM isn't asking the court for the encampment to be dismantled. It wants to remove materials like tents and fences that are less than 3 meters away from its buildings, and for protesters to stop allegedly obstructing access to its campus and destroying property. In a statement, the protesters called the request in the injunction request excessive. Human rights lawyer and McGill professor Pearl Eliadis says the courts will need to balance protesters' rights and the university's property rights.
In some cases, a temporary structure and an encampment might form part of that broader right to dissent under the Canadian Charter.
McGill's own emergency injunction request to dismantle the tents on its campus was rejected last week. Jennifer Yoon, CBC News, Montreal.
And finally, universities in Hong Kong are seeing a steep drop in people from the city becoming faculty. For the first time in decades, there are more academics from abroad and mainland China. China's tough security law for Hong Kong is being blamed for the decline. Journalist Laura Westbrook explains.
On campus at Hong Kong's oldest university, HKU, exams have finished. This is one of 8 public universities where mainland Chinese lecturers now outnumber those from the city. Students here have noticed the change.
Well, I wish there could be more diversity, like from different countries, not only from mainland China.
I think in the end of the day, the quality of the teaching is what matters most for me.
Beijing imposed a national security law in 2020 that criminalizes secession, subversion, terrorism, and collusion with foreign or external forces. Britain and Canada responded by announcing new migration schemes for Hong Kongers. Hundreds of thousands of residents have since emigrated. Steve Jung from the University of London has noticed an increase in Hong Kong academics who have relocated to the UK.
Those who are working on Hong Kong's politics, society, the freedom for them to do their research without fear of the state security law of Hong Kong being used to punish them has made a lot of them very, very uncomfortable staying on in Hong Kong.
A reality not lost on students who have watched the educational landscape shift from one of open critical thought to one increasingly under Beijing's control. Laura Westbrook for CBC News, Hong Kong.
And that's the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Peter Cowan.
Well, good morning, everyone. It is sopping out there. It's raining steadily in downtown Winnipeg, and we're going to be under it until tomorrow afternoon. We do have that rainfall warning still in effect. Abby will tell us more about it in a moment. Thanks for joining us this Friday morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio with our whole team here at the show. You're on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. It's 4 degrees, by the way. This half hour on the program this week is Safety Awareness Week for boating. And we're going to hear quite a tale of survival and a lesson learned from a woman who says that she's an avid boater and considers herself a strong swimmer, but she had a really scary experience on the river, and she wants to share it to raise awareness for other people to stay safe out there. So stay tuned. We'll hear her story. And then Janet Stewart's going to pop in. Today, the call-in conversation. Tell us about a coach that made a difference in your life. So Janet will talk more about that, but I always like to throw out the Radio Noon listener line in case you're up right now and you go, oh, I have a story, but I'm on my way to work. I can leave it somewhere, though. Here's where you leave it, 788-3797. Right now, 8:11, Heather Wells is in with news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a rainfall warning has led to an overland flood warning. Up to 60 millimeters of rain is possible by the time this system passes late tomorrow afternoon. The province says before this storm, soil moisture levels were about normal, and that means once the ground gets saturated, we could see overland flooding. It also says heavy rain in a short period of time could create high surface runoff, something to watch out for. Raising awareness of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls through music.
We thought a song would be a powerful message, especially a song that is written and created by students.
Strathcona school teacher Peter Grozdanovich, whose students created a music video, and it was among other projects showcased yesterday at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights as part of an event called Be an Upstander. We'll hear more about it in our next local news at 8:30.
Out the window this morning, lots of rain capes. Everyone's hood is up, and I've seen a number of different cool umbrellas. A black one with a lotus flower just went by, another one with roses. We had a leopard umbrella. That one looks like the top of a circus tent across the street from Portage Ave. But honestly, I don't think, Abby, they're keeping anyone dry. There's just too wet out there.
I don't think this is an umbrella weather because it's blowing, so the lower part of the body is still going to get
do much.
wet. It's not going to do much, and I'm just speaking because I would lose the umbrella. That's just me, an advocate of don't bring my umbrella out. Anyway, it's wet in the south, but the northern part of the province, we're seeing fog advisory for the Churchill area. We hear of this dense fog causing a near zero visibility for Churchill, and is expected to last through the morning. However, conditions would improve by late morning. But just have it at the back of your mind that visibility might be significantly and suddenly reduced to near zero if you're driving. So drivers and travelers in the Churchill area should exercise caution and reduce the speed when necessary, and be prepared for rapidly changing visibility conditions. Here in Winnipeg, it is 5 degrees. We're seeing the rain outside for today. We should expect this rain, heavier times. We're going to be seeing about 30 to 40 millimeters, and it will be breezy this morning with winds increasing to become quite windy around the afternoon period, and we'll see temperatures remaining steady near 8 degrees. Tonight, the rain will continue, and we'll get additional 10 millimeters, and the winds will pick up, becoming quite stronger near the midnight period, and then it's going to be kind of cold. So you might just, and this is going to be into tomorrow also. So it's going to be wet, and and soggy.
Yeah, and I forgot about the wind. I'm glad you mentioned it. There's that too. There's a lot going on in traffic. Corey's in with an update.
Yeah, and speaking of that wind and that rain, data call from Allison just telling people to just be careful in general, especially on the perimeter. Poor visibility right now is what she's saying, as lots of just puddles as well. So just be really careful when you're driving on the perimeter, says Allison. Thanks for that call as well. A couple of things to look out for here in the city on the roads. On Taché, about 100 meters north of Goulet, the traffic signals are out right now, so you want to treat that as a four-way stop. And as well, another reminder, I did hear about this a couple hours ago, but I haven't heard that it's not there. So I do want to remind folks that there was a call we got about a jackknife semi blocking that cloverleaf that takes you from westbound number 1 onto the northbound east perimeter. It was blocking the entirety of the road, but I did get to hear from caller David, who said you can kind of creep around it, but you have to be very, very careful. So that may be causing backup still for folks. If that is cleaned up, I would love to get an update. And finally, one other thing for folks, the city just kind of issued a notice to folks. Now, new Lajimodi construction zone east Mint Place to Cottonwood, going northbound on Lajimodiere. There's going to be multiple lane closures for street construction. That's happening until July 26th. So if you're heading northbound on Lajimodiere between now and then, you can expect some pretty big delays during rush hour. So do look out for that. Finally, though, on a lighter note, got a call from Down on a Bike. He said it was wet, windy, but refreshing. So thanks for that positive attitude out there. Glad he enjoyed his bike ride. But if you see something else going on out there, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
Well, up next on CBC, it started out as a peaceful day fishing, but it soon turned into a life-or-death scenario for my next guest. Andre McLaughlin is an experienced boater who was out catfishing on the Red River in Lockport earlier this month. But then that day took a turn. All of a sudden, the boat moved, and Andre found herself overboard. Now she's with us to share her tale with others during Boating Safety Awareness Week. Good morning.
Good morning.
So you're out on the water. You're an experienced boater, Andre. Tell me how the day started. Like, where specifically were you, and what was the plan?
So we were just about, I would say, a kilometer or so past the locks, and the water was moving quite quickly, and our anchor, unfortunately, wasn't heavy enough to hold us in place, and so the boat was slowly moving with the current, and I was about to cast on the bow of the boat, and the anchor suddenly grabbed something, and I just, within a split second, I just went head first into the water, fishing rod and all. Unfortunately, I wasn't wearing my life jacket, and so by the time I came up for air again, I was 30 feet away from the boat, and I was panicking at that point.
What did it feel like when you were even under the water and that? Like, can you describe sort of the shock or the sound, or, what it was like for you?
For me, it was just like everything went completely quiet, and I had my eyes open for whatever reason, and it was just like yellow and brown, and all I could think of was, this is it. This is just how I'm going to go, because I know that the current is very strong there. And once I came up, I'm a strong swimmer, but I was trying my hardest to get back to the boat, and the boat just seemed to be moving further away from me because the current was taking me away.
What was your reaction that you were that far away from the boat?
I was screaming. I was crying. All I could think was, get me out, get me out, get me out. And I could see my husband, and I could see him trying to think fast of what to do. And I was just yelling at him to get me out. And finally, he was going to cut the anchor to come and get me, but then he had realized he had tied a rope to the end of the boat, and he tossed it to me with about a 15-pound magnet on there, and he tossed it to me, and luckily I caught it, and he just dragged me back to the boat as I tried to swim to get out as fast as I could. I was just terrified.
20 to 30 feet away in what? In minutes? Like when you came up?
In seconds. In like, by the time I came up, I mean, I would imagine that was a matter of 2 or 3 seconds.
Yeah. A lot of us think, especially you mentioned you're a strong swimmer. I'm a strong swimmer. Love being on water. A lot of us sort of think in our heads, I think, yeah, I could go overboard, but like I'll be fine. Can you share sort of how you're changed by this experience?
Absolutely. Like I said, I would consider myself a strong swimmer, but I was panicking, and so I was swallowing water, and I was not clear-headed enough to remember to stay calm. Um, and thank God my husband stayed calm, because if it wouldn't have been for him, I think that things would have ended up very differently. And I do believe if I would have been wearing my life jacket, things would have been so different. And we consider ourselves experienced boaters, and we're on the water every single weekend in the summer. And we think this could never happen to me, and it did happen to me within a split second. And I just need to get my message out there to make sure that people take my experience and my mistake very seriously, because I will be wearing my life jacket from now on, because I learned the hard way that in a matter of seconds, no matter how experienced you are, things can happen and turn for the worse very, very quickly.
I understand not everyone is taking it seriously. You posted this on Facebook, and most people, of course, are. But it just sort of highlights the need. Some people are saying, in what way? What kind of comments are people?
Well, you know what? The reason I had posted it online is because immediately after it happened, I had a family gathering, and I was telling my friends and family about this, and I didn't really feel like people were taking it seriously. They were kind of laughing and like, oh, geez, that must have really sucked. And I was like, people are not understanding that this could have ended up a lot differently. I mean, I could have hit my head and become unconscious, and that would have been the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really wanted to put my experience in and be vulnerable, so that people could, in a way that people could understand that this was extremely serious. It's not funny. And we really need to take into consideration boat safety, as I know everyone knows, but we don't necessarily take very seriously when we're out there on the water.
I do like that your love of the water has not been changed by this. I understand even then you made the most of the day afterwards. You got back in the boat, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Once I got back in the boat and I took a few minutes to gather myself and catch my breath, I put my life jacket on, and we just continued to fish. And I'll tell you, I was extremely careful while I was moving on the boat. I don't move around on the boat now when it's moving. And yeah, I'm so thankful that I'm okay, because I know how differently that could have ended up.
And what about your use of a life jacket? Obviously, that's the big thing that's changed, as you alluded to.
Yeah, so we've always had our life jackets on board. That's something that we've just always done, but we never wear them. They're too big, but I now understand the importance of them, and so I have some good life jackets on the way that will be properly fitted and that we will be wearing every time we are on the boat.
How are you doing now? Even mentally, just having gone through something like that.
You know what? I'm doing a lot better than I thought I was going to be. I think it was just a real eye-opener for me, and humbled me a little bit to just realize that I'm not invincible, that bad things can happen to me, and to never think that I know better, or that, these things can't happen to me. And so I just take every day a little bit slower and make sure that I'm taking account for my safety at all times.
All the best. Have a wonderful, safe summer on the water, but thank you so much for sharing your story.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
That's Andre McLaughlin with us live this morning, resident of Giroux, Manitoba. That's about 40 kilometers southeast of Winnipeg, talking about her story of surviving a sudden fall overboard into the Red River earlier this month. This is Boating Safety Awareness Week.
We carry a world of information in our pockets because we want to know. Breaking news that shapes our world. Staying on top of stories around the globe. And connected close to home. It's news you can trust. Delivered when you want and where you want. On Canada's News app. Now with CBC Radio 1. Local and live. Download the CBC News app for free.
Well, as you heard in our news this morning, it's all about the rain. And so it's a little bit lighter in downtown Winnipeg. You can see that the wipers are on a little bit lower speed than they had been earlier on the vehicles passing by through our window here at CBC. But this is all going to continue. The rain will come and go. It's going to be heavy and constant. And then it'll lighten up and come back. But I mean, we're in for a great day here in Winnipeg, across southern Manitoba, and into the border towns as well. 50 to 60 millimeters on the way. It's going to be windy and gusty. And of course, now the province has issued an overland flood warning morning for some parts of Manitoba. So just pay attention to the weather. It's going to be a wet one. And we thought we'd pick it up a little bit for you this Friday morning. And it's still Friday after all, right? So we have, what I think is always a happy tune. Here's Michael Bublé and Everything.
You're a falling star, you're the getaway car, you're the line in the sand when I go too far. You're the swimming pool on an August day, and you're the perfect thing to say. And you play it coy, but it's kinda cute. Oh, when you smile at me, you know exactly what you do. Baby, don't pretend that you don't know it's true, 'cause you can see it when I look at you. And in this crazy life, and through these crazy times, it's you, you make me sing your every line, your every word, your everything. You're a carousel, you're always well, and you light me up when you ring my bell. You're a mystery, you're from outer space, you're every minute of my everyday. And I can't believe that I'm your man, and I get to kiss you, baby, just because I can. Whatever comes our way, I will see it through, and you know that's what our love can do. And in this crazy life, and through these crazy times, it's you, you make me sing your every line, your every word, your everything. Everything, your every song, and I sing along, 'cause you're my everything. Yeah, yeah. So la 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 la. So la 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 la.
Oh, me and Michael doing an airband this morning. It was epic on YouTube. I'm sure you appreciated it. We needed music to pick us up, so that was Abby's pick. Good one, Abby. Michael Bublé and Everything on your cloudy Friday morning. Well, we're going to pick you up a little bit more now, because we're sure to hear a lot of stories of inspiration on the call-in conversation this afternoon with Janet Stewart on Radio Noon between 12:30 and 1. Janet is in studio. Hi.
Good morning. May I just take a moment and ad-lib just madly here?
Do it.
People talk to me all the time about this job switch I've made for the last year from TV to radio, and what do I like about the change? I like coming in here in the morning and seeing you and hearing you sing along with Michael Bublé. She's got a lovely voice, folks. Really? No, that sounded so nice.
It's not hard to be in a good mood on a Friday morning listening to a good tune, I'll tell you that. Best job in the world. Let's get to what... so first of all, who's your guest and what's your question?
Dr. Alicia Strawn is coming in. She's a professor and associate dean of the Faculty of Kinesiology and Recreation Management at UM. Have you noticed how U of M wants to be called UM lately?
Yeah, it's like a shift we have to make. UM.
Anyhow, sorry, no, UM. So what we're talking about is coaching. There's a need for coaches in this world, and there's a reason for them. Good coaches. Mm-hmm. We want to know what coach made a difference for you?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, that take you back to a good memory or something that taught you a lesson. Is there any coach who stands out for you, Marcy?
You know what? It's not a coach, and I'm going to lose the name. But I remember the school in the moment very vividly, so I apologize here just on the spot. But it is this is the sort of sensibility of the story I think is important. So Chief Peguis Junior High, I could never run, like never run. I was always a big kid. I was always carrying extra weight. I was embarrassed. I would sweat a ton, and I thought I could never run, so I would just sort of shy away from that. I do other sports, but never run. Forget it. And forget about long distances. Like the 3,000 meters around a track was like, I'll never do that. I had a gym teacher after a track meet look at me and say, we're going to do it together. Everyone's going to go home and I'm going to do it with you. And it was empty, just he and I on the track. And that gym teacher ran beside me for the whole 3,000 meters. That's 7.5 laps around a track. For me, it is probably still to this day one of the longest distances I've ever run. But I only did that because he was right beside me going, yes, you can. Yes, you can. Yeah, yes, you can.
That's beautiful.
Love
and you
that.
just brought back a couple good memories for me, too.
Oh,
so
I bet.
Thank you, Marcy. 204-788-3797. It's Friday. We need a pick-me-up from the rain. Give us a call. Tell us a story about someone who made a difference coaching you.
Love that. There's CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, we're drenched. It is 5 degrees in Winnipeg. Rain at times heavy today. Up to 40 millimeters during the day and then more tonight and into tomorrow. Temperature sticking close to 8 through the day. A hard rain is gonna fall, and already it is adding up. So far, the weather station in Miami, Manitoba, reports the most precipitation this morning at 22.9 millimeters. By comparison, Winnipeg had 6 millimeters by 7 this morning. Now, this system isn't going anywhere fast. It will linger until late tomorrow, and it's prompted the province to issue an overland flood warning. The province says before the storm, soil moisture levels were about normal, which means once the ground gets saturated, we could see overland flooding. Heavy rain can also cause water to back up into basements and sewage to be released into the rivers. Last week, more than 20 megaliters of sewage was released into the Red River because of the wet weather. Now, some people in St. James worry today's heavy rain is ending up in their basements. More than a dozen people on Truro Street had water and sewage back up into their basements last week. Jennifer Shepherd noticed it when she was letting her dog out last Thursday.
Your heart completely stops, your stomach drops, and you're thinking, is that what I think it is? Is that, like, it looks like there's a lot of water down there, but I'm going to go down and check it out. And I walked down the stairs, took a look at the basement, and it was everywhere. It was a couple of inches of water.
Shepherd says 17 of her neighbors, 17, have now joined a Facebook group called Truro Street Basement Flooding for Support. People are already reporting flooding again this morning. In a statement, the city says it is aware of the issues last week on Truro and are working to fix them. Progressive Conservatives in Tuxedo have made their choice to succeed former Premier Heather Stefanson as an MLA. They have chosen Lawrence Pinsky to run for the PCs in the next month by-election. And as CBC's Ian Fraze explains, he marked his nomination victory half a world away.
While Lawrence Pinsky's family and friends were at Varsity View Community Center celebrating his nomination, he was fast asleep, thousands of kilometers away. Pinsky was in Israel because of the sudden death of a family friend. He made the trip before the NDP called the by-election earlier than many expected. So the PCs moved up their Tuxedo nomination meeting, and Pinsky was left to celebrate his victory from afar. In an interview through FaceTime, Pinsky credited his team of volunteers. He said the conflict in Israel partially led him to run. Pinsky said the rising tide of anti-Semitism must be stopped. Tuxedo is usually a safe Tory seat, but the NDP made it close in last year's election, coming within 300 votes. Ian Fraze, CBC News, Winnipeg.
An affordable housing co-op in Brandon worries it may not be able to maintain all its 81 units. Spruce Wood Housing Co-op says the 39-year-old buildings need about $2.5 million of repairs. It recently signed a new deal with Manitoba Housing, which will cover operating costs for 5 years. But co-op management says this provincial funding isn't enough to guarantee rent will stay low. Irene Thiessen has lived there for 30 years.
Putting up money to build and repair places, and we need to think about here as well. We need to be able to keep things repaired. We've made a good job till now to keep things repaired, and not a cent from anybody for any of it. It just doesn't make sense.
The province and Spruce Woods would not disclose how much funding the co-op will be getting. The co-op has been lobbying all levels of government for funding. A music video to raise awareness of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls.
Respect us, protect us, save us, find us, fix this, don't let this happen again.
That music video was created by grade 5 students at Strathcona School. Their project was part of a showcase at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights yesterday. Their teacher, Peter Grozdanovich, says work started on this project last year.
We thought a song would be a powerful message, especially a song that is written and created by students. And so then we paired up with musicians and video editors and graphic designers, and we collaborated together to create this amazing piece of music.
More than 70 students from various schools took part in that showcase. Their projects all touching on different rights topics, encouraging people to be upstanders. Upstanders, which is the name of the event. You can find more news. All you have to do is head to our website. We keep it updated all day for you. cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Thanks to Heather Wells and Aaron Broman and Megan Ketchison in our news center. Thanks to our huge team here that covers all hours of programming. So we're talking about morning. We're talking about noon, afternoon, up to speed, weekend. So a lot of programming hours to cover. Associate producers, Corey Funk, Abby Adiyemi, Chloe Friesen, Issa Kixon, Kalkadan Mulugeta, Sierra Sanders, Chidi Akuma, Jim Capito, Dylan Longhurst, Daniel Friesen, Marshall Hodgins, and Bruce Layden. Community reporter Shanley Vidal, host Nadia Kidwai, Faith Fundal, and Janet Stewart, and producer in unit Wendy Parker, YouTube producer Brad Lillies, Nellie Gonzalez, show producer and current affairs unit overall, and Leif Larson is a senior producer of audio. And I should not say huge team, I should say huge number of programming hours to fill. Speaking of which, our afternoon crew is going to be covering us something special today, Corey.
That's right. CBR's home opener tonight, Woot Woot Canada Life. They'll be on location talking to Chad Posthumus, the Beast from River East, playing on the team, as well as the Tracksuit Brothers, who, if you've been to a game, you know. Yeah, it should be fun.
So hopefully you have a safe commute home. Remember all the rain. And Abby, last word on the weather?
Heavy rain in the southern part of the province all the way. Brandon is seeing snow, and of course Altona is having heavy rain. Drivers there say turn on your tail lights. People are not seeing you ahead.
Really important to remember. I know in snowstorms we're all, you automatically think about it, but in heavy rain like this, that's important to pass along. So have a good, safe rest of your Friday, everybody. Take care, stay dry if you can, and have a wonderful weekend. Thanks for listening to CBC.